Thank you all for being here. Much appreciated. This is the Reverie Roundtable, which we do Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern. But we have like a smaller set today, and we might be going for a short amount of time, but still, we're going to give you a lot of content. All right. So if you are watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe, and consider coming around during when we do this live. Right, we'd love to have you. Also hit that join button and become a member and support the channel that way if you could. Thank you so much. Oh, and thank you XArgs for also subbing to the channel. Thank you, really kind. All right, so we'll go down the line. We'll give introductions to everyone, and then we'll go from there. We'll start with the one who walked away. Okay. Anyway, we'll go. Oh, he's coming back. This is fucking 6'5" time. He's so tall. There you go. He's back. Scott, hi. We'll start with your introduction first.
Yeah, what's up? So I am Fabian Liberty. You probably see me occasionally on debate panels, but Fabian Liberty is a duo anarcho-capitalist stream. I am Scott. My co-host Mark doesn't really do the debate stuff. So, you know, people love to hate me here on Twitch, and that's usually why I'm brought on. Thank you so much for having me again. You know, I love doing the Reverie stuff on Mondays. It's a nice way to start the week. Like, just really just get in with the blood first day so that I can have something to relax on afterwards.
Scott, you know, I just love to love you, right? That's all I have.
You're so full of shit. You're lying so
Okay. Thank you for being here nonetheless. And thank you, Lucid Limbo, for also using your Prime Gaming and starting us up a hype train. Level 1 hype train, 50% down, 50% left. So we can go to a level 2 hype train, support the channel, sub to the channel, get bits or give subs. Help us out. Let's see if we can knock out this hype train. Thank you so much for the kind of support we've seen so far. All right, moving forward. We have Katie. Katie, who... Have we had you on the Reverie before? I don't think we have. Whatever. You do lots. You're involved with the channel. And I'm super happy to have you. All right. She is an amazing person, amazing friend, right? A smart individual. Glad to have you around. So, Katie, how are you?
I'm good. I'm Katie. I exist, and that's my introduction. There you go.
Here. Starting off right. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Run
I'm saving you time. I'm a good friend.
Next, we have a person brand new. We had them on Saturday. They popped into our open panel. I'm like, oh, you're great. You're amazing. Let's bring you in, right? Not So Erudite is here with us again. Thank you for stopping by, being a part of this, and agreeing to come on. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All right.
Yep. There's not much to say. You kind of introduced me. Brand new to the intranet scene as far as streaming and whatnot. I think my first stream was Saturday, so yeah, I'm just glad to be here and kind of excited to see where this conversation goes.
Okay, all right. Next, we have Mr. Stephen Bunnell. Right, Destiny is here with us again. He's gonna mumble something at us, and we're gonna appreciate him for it. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm a far left political philosophy kind of guy, and I argue for far center left stuff. And wow, I can't wait for this conversation.
All right, thank you so much. All right, next, we have also another brand new person. Super excited to have them, right? We have Half-Baked Takes. They come highly recommended from a certain special individual, a VIP named Counterpoints, if you might remember him. They wanted this person here, so I'm like, okay, let's make it happen. So, Half-Baked Takes, thank you so much for stopping by. Tell the channel, like the audience, and myself about you.
God damn it, Connor. Why the fuck did you put so much pressure on me? My name's Todd. I'm a master's student working on my thesis project for public administration. And somehow I ended up here on the Reverie. You can find me on Twitter at HBTakes. I'm just excited to talk to everybody here, get some more content, and get some more info for this paper. So this will be fun.
Thank you. And thank you to you, Katie, for gifting, what was it? Was it 1,500 bits altogether?
I don't know. I was like, how much is going to take to make the hype train happen?
Okay.
Fine, whatever.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate it. Hey, again, we have a hype train going on, level 2 hype train now because of our friend Katie. All right, support the channel, sub, gift bits or gift subs. Thank you, much appreciated. So before we get started with the actual topic, Destiny, I actually have a question for you. Shout out to your old life. For the longest time, we've been stuck at Starcraft 2, right? Blizzard has just kind of fucking just forgot about that RTS lifestyle. And I've always said that the reason that's happened is because it's not as easy to like shamelessly monetize as other categories, right? Like add loot boxes into a game like StarCraft, right? And I thought that we wouldn't get a sequel until there was a change in management. That's literally the only possibility. Bob Kotick at the top of Activision Blizzard, that wouldn't happen. Do you think that with Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard, we possibly might be the closest we are to getting StarCraft 3?
Absolutely not. I don't think Microsoft is going to start making huge decisions changing how Blizzard runs. I think that it's just going to come down to whenever they run out of other IPs to make money from, they might do it in the future.
All right, well, that's really depressing. Okay. I happen to love StarCraft. All right, well, thanks for that. And thank you for the 100 bits. Let's see if we get the hype train up. All right, let's get to it. So we'll stop for the second topic, and we'll go from there. Leftists try to elevate and agitate for lofty goals. Medicare for all, wealth redistribution, equitable housing, just to name a few. In the effort to attain these goals, there's a push and pull over whether compromise is ever acceptable. Are leftists completely unpragmatic? Do they not understand what it actually takes to accomplish their goals? If so, is the movement doomed to fail? Is there any meaningful space on the political stage for leftist agitators? And so I wanted to make sure that my feeling on this question is gotten across, right? So of course, leftists compromise, right? The leftists, who do, who don't, whatever, right? But what I really wanted to juxtapose that with is what liberals consider compromising, right? People who are on the left, right? Marginal allies. But what they consider compromise and what leftists consider compromise are completely different things, right? And for instance, leftists want a single-payer healthcare plan, and then a liberal in office gave us the Affordable Care Act, which is a Republican plan, right? That's what they call compromise, and what I call compromise is something completely different. So I want to put those two side by side. So shout out. All right, so we'll start with opening statements. Fabian Liberty Scott.
Yeah. So first of all, I really appreciate you bringing a right-wing anarchist on here to tell you how we can make the left wing more successful in doing exactly what I don't want them to do. I appreciate you, fielding it open so that I can help you guys defeat me, I guess, but I guess I'll give it a shot. So I think the question itself kind of begs a time frame that really doesn't look at history in an accurate way, right? Conservatives have essentially lost every major battle in the institutions and in the state throughout American history. I want to kind of keep this mostly in America without getting too far into Europe and things of that nature. But they've lost pretty much every battle. And the thing is that when people say, "Oh, agitators aren't effective," I feel like the idea is that the agitators, yes, they fail, but they always push the needle, right? And this is kind of the history of the United States, right? It's over and over and over again. What occurs is you get a group of really angry agitators, right? They get angrier and they get louder, and then you get liberals, and they form a coalition together. Once they form that coalition together for a period of time in American history, they work together, they get some compromises, they achieve some small victory, then the liberals drop out. The radicals are left looking like crazy fucking idiots or looking wild to everyone else. Conservatives take over for a while. They stabilize the new changes in the system until eventually conservatives get too much power and they end up trying to culturally enforce things, be it, their religious views, their cultural views, etc. And while this is happening, the radicals are usually training a new group, a new generation of young radicals to kind of start the cycle over and over again. So when we say, is it doomed to failure? Does it not work? It's I think it does work. You just have to zoom out and kind of look at history, right? In the Civil War, you had people like John Brown. You had Frederick Douglass, William Lloyd Garrison, right? They made a coalition with the Republican Party and created the Republican Party. You saw this in the labor movement with communists and the Wobblies and the anarchists. You saw this with the New Deal. You saw this under the Truman era and progressives. You saw this in the growth and expansion of the state under the war with Truman as well. You saw this with the civil rights, right? You had liberals like MLK forming a coalition with people like Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael, right? It was the radicals and the liberals working together, compromising, that achieved small victories until the liberals eventually give up, per se, because they feel like they've achieved something in their generation, and the cycle repeats. So I guess what I would ask is, if you're gonna, as we go forward, can you kind of define what the fuck you mean by failure? Because if you're looking at history through the lens of a conservative, you're looking at a history of people that have lost every single fight ever throughout the entirety of American history. It doesn't really make any sense unless you're a lefty saying you want some radical Marxist or socialist change and then you don't get it. It just doesn't really make any sense to, I guess, the rest of the country.
Thank you. Katie.
I'm tempted to answer the question that he asked, but yeah, I think that, like, not being an American and just looking at American politics from outside of it, it's very weird because America seems to be so far behind Europe and other countries who are not European on a lot of really simple issues like healthcare. Like, I remember when the Rittenhouse thing came out, and I was talking to some people, and they were talking about this conflict that, like, what, you would not want people to like protect their property and stuff like that. And I'm like, in normal countries, if your property gets damaged, there's like reasonable insurance, so you don't lose your livelihood and like have to be homeless where no one will take care of you or help you. So I don't know. I mean, yes, Fabian, I guess in the test of history across hundreds of years, there has been progression towards like better things, but there's a lot of stuff that America is very much behind on, and that's not even leftist stuff. That's just like social democrats, which is not even leftism. So I don't know. You seem to be pretty far back as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, it's my opening statement.
Not her and I.
I don't have anything super complex. I think it's pretty obvious that the Overton window has shifted left over time. To argue that, like, I understand you're kind of outlining this like liberal shift left with the radical reactionary snap right, and then kind of the same thing goes. But the reality is if we look back even 300 years, culturally, we obviously value much more left-leaning things even now than we did 300 years ago. So I think to some extent, yes, some of this advocacy works. Although I think that the modern form of like advocacy and agitators that we see are kind of a different breed because social media has changed the landscape, I would say, entirely. Even though these same psychological factors are at place, it is sped up.
Steven.
The initial question was whether or not they should be agitating. Was that right?
Yeah. Well, no. So the question is, for these agitators, right? Well, do they have space, right? Is there a
Yeah, okay, I'll just make sure I remembered, because getting long responses. I think the important thing to remember when it comes to like being an agitator is that everybody has a role. I think AOC has done a really good job at learning how to kind of do this. So like we should, if you are further left than Biden, then you should constantly be saying, we need to be moving further left, we need to do this, we need to do that. But I think people need to understand that everybody has their role to play in the system. So when Biden doesn't come out as being like a literal fucking leftist, like the most socialist communist person in the world, it's not because he's a failure or because he's a horrible person or because he's a piece of shit. It's because his job as a legislator, well, as a president really, is that he has to balance out what his party wants, what's politically viable, what's acceptable, etc. And he's not going to be able to move as far left as maybe like a BLM activist or like your small mutual aid council might be able to. Just like, yeah, you can push as much as you want for certain changes. Yeah, you'll have varying levels of effectiveness depending on where you're pushing for your change, but recognize that everybody kind of has a different role to play in enacting that change, and not everybody can be the exact same thing that you want them to be.
Half-baked takes.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that agitators necessarily in the long term don't lead to progress. But when we look at something like Build Back Better, the radicals are and the radicals and the extremists, the ones that weren't willing to compromise, were the ones that are now ended up halting this legislation. So I don't know if it necessarily helps you in the short term. I don't know if it helps you get anything done right now, but yeah, I guess agitators do long term lead us towards progress. But I don't know if that's just because society is tending to naturally lead to a progressive state.
Okay, open to the panel. Did you have big takes? Who messed up Build Back Better? Was that progressives, like leftists? I don't know if that's.
Would you say it's messing up?
I mean, I would like just say it's help make sure that it didn't happen.
I would just say, yeah. Well, I would say like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. I don't know if they messed up, but they understand what are the rules and they abided by those rules. And if you if you were to just cut a section out for this filibuster to say, okay, the filibuster doesn't apply here, I mean, it leads to a slippery slope, and the radicals would have happily allowed that to happen.
Oh man, we're gonna have fun with you. Thanks so much. All right, anyone else before I go back after him? Anyone else?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think Destiny and I agree on this because we're right. I think really the more interesting conversation here is not about, whether or not agitators have their role, because I think it is kind of obvious. I think the real question is how far can you shift philosophically to the left as a nation? And how far can the thinking of the people and how many of these institutions can become left-leaning or more and more leftist before the system itself stops working the way it has in the past few hundred years? Because I think before in our history, what we had was a sensible liberal left, right? And then you had a radical left, and they compromised together so that we could have more modernist values, right? So that we could get rid of some of the baggage that conservatives wanted to keep with them from their religious beliefs and things of that nature. And instead, what we have now is we have a Democratic Party of neoliberals that are rich and corrupt and don't actually have liberal values in any way, shape, or form. And then you have radicals, and I think the philosophy and the institutions are becoming rotted. And so what I really wonder is, can we continue this process as we have in the past without the entire thing kind of crumbling and breaking apart at a certain point?
Scott, do you think those neoliberals represent the people who voted for them? Do you think they're accurately represented?
Unfortunately, do they represent their interests? No. But do they represent their philosophical thinking? Yes, I do, I think.
Okay,
I think that the left yeah, go ahead.
Unless you when you said that how far can we go left until the system as we know it changes? Unless you mean the collapse of the system and the United States going to chaos. What is exactly the issue of the system fundamentally changes if it's better?
Well, I mean, I would obviously not argue that it's better to shift the system more left.
Okay.
I'm an ACAB, right? So that doesn't make any sense for me to say that shifting left is better. I just have to reject that presumption in your question.
No. But
I mean, if it was theoretically so, which it isn't, there wouldn't be anything wrong with that. But unfortunately, there is a problem there.
So when you posed the question, you meant how far can we go left before we radically change the current system, which I think is better than whatever system will follow if we go more left.
So what I'm talking about is the core axioms of the American political system. Yeah, capitalism, super base, super good for us, right?
No.
Yeah, well, you're someone that said a democratic socialist isn't even leftist, and they're not even left. So obviously we know that your view is going to be a little skewed here. But so what I'm saying is,
you're the objective one, you see.
Yeah, well,
wait, just to be clear,
I mean,
real quick, a social democrat is not a leftist, technically, right? A social democrat should still be a democratic socialist.
Define leftist.
So in a worldly sense, I don't know. She sounds like, I don't know where you're from, Katie, but I think when people outside of America use the term leftist, that wasn't supposed to be an insult. I'm sorry, Prime is laughing. In the United States, when we say leftist, we mean like liberals. We have different words for things. Jesus Christ, I'm getting confused. Worldly, when we say leftist, usually we mean socialist or communist. That's what leftist tends to mean. So a liberal in the United States.
So your definition of leftist is only a socialist or a communist?
Generally speaking, I think when Katie says leftist, that's what she means.
That might be like a left-wing bias here, but I would say that most of the country of the United States,
no, because
of right-wing
European or even Scandinavian countries, they're not socialists. They're capitalist. They just have a lot better things than what you have with a capitalist system. So it wouldn't even work by what you're saying. You can still have a lot of these reforms which are good for the people and still retain a capitalist system. And that's not even being a leftist.
Having a market-based economy, I reject the idea that having a market-based economy somehow makes you a capitalist.
Wait, but that's literally what.
Well, doesn't it by definition?
Yeah, wait, hold on. Let's just get instead of arguing past, what do you think capitalism is then? Can you explain that?
Right, the free exchange, like capitalism, and like as Adam West is putting it, right? Like I'm sorry, right? Like Adam Smith, sorry. Like it needs to be a free exchange of labor, of goods and services. So when the state is involved in that process in any way, shape, or form, you have a mixed economy. You no longer have a pure capitalist economy unless the state is only functioning to protect the nation and to protect private property rights and is a voluntaristic system of taxation.
Okay,
by that definition, even the United States wouldn't be capitalist.
But by your definition, China's capitalist, America's capitalist.
China is capitalist. Just because they have communism in the name doesn't mean that they're not capitalist.
Listen. So if all of them are capitalism, right, then the word capitalism really doesn't have any strength and it doesn't hold any water, and it's essentially
no, it doesn't if you understand other systems that don't work like capitalism, right?
Okay, let's instead of arguing,
it means having a market economy.
It's more fun to fight over the concepts than I think to fight over the definitions, right? So I think broadly speaking, capitalism usually implies two things. My understanding is one, you can have a private owner. So I could buy a business or I could buy stock or equity in a business. And two, there's usually, you described it as a free exchange of goods and services. You have some form of market economy. So in the United States, we have a market economy. People can buy and sell things at prices that aren't dictated by the government. And two, private citizens can own different things. Now, some people would argue that places like China would be run under a state capitalist economy because the workers themselves don't own the businesses. There is a free exchange of goods and services, but the government might be the ownership. There might be a lot of SOEs, state-owned enterprises, but it's still not necessarily like a socialist or communist thing. Now, I think we can argue over whether these are good or bad, but I think if we just sit here and argue over labels all day, we're just having semantic debates. But I think largely speaking,
So
Scandinavian countries and the United States are all clearly capitalist countries.
We'll establish this. Which is, again, you said you don't want to get into definitions, but then you're kind of like making the definition after.
Well, we can get into definitions. I just think we should argue like what is it isn't capitalist.
You don't have individual sovereignty and private property rights in many of these countries, and so I would argue that it is not capitalism. You would, and that's okay. We're just going to agree to disagree on that. That being said, your definition of leftist is only socialist and only communist, and I'm simply saying when I use the term leftist, right, I'm using it from an American context, and I'm using it from someone that is on the right side of the Overton window. And when people on the right side of the Overton window in America say leftist, there's two things here. They usually mean anybody that is an SJW, anybody that is socialist, anybody that is communist, left-wing anarchists. They also mean social progressives. They also mean people that want a large state. It is a much larger conglomerate of individuals.
And I think that's totally fine. The only reason we bring it up is because if somebody says like, oh, well, the Democratic Party in the United States, they're not even leftist. You all actually agree with that. But if you disagree, it's because we're fighting on the definition. Like all of us here agree that the Democratic Party is not a socialist or communist party in the United States, right? We all agree with that.
The problem that I was trying to point out, right, is that while we used to have liberals and radicals that worked together to form a coalition for left-wing movements throughout our history. What we have is we no longer have philosophical liberals. They are a dying breed that exist really only on the right wing. Because
lucky that they're in the government.
You're saying
they're all in governance. How lucky.
Half-baked takes. Give it a try.
Yeah.
So are you talking about like the 90s era Democrats are now the Republican Party, like a majority of the Republican Party are the 90s era Democrats?
You don't see
like the Bill Clinton Democrats.
You don't see union Democrats and blue dog Democrats, which is kind of a key, right? Like these people are a dying breed. What you see is corporatist Democrats that don't give a fuck about liberal values, and then you see progressives, and then you see some radicals. Now, when I say that they are philosophically no longer liberals, right? I'm talking about liberalism, modernity, enlightenment values. I'm talking about believing in individual liberty, right? When people start talking about equity, they're no longer a liberal. They are not philosophically liberal. When you start seeing people pushing for things like critical theory, that's not a liberal. That is someone that has Marxist leanings in their philosophy, right? What you are seeing is the dying of what many people are now recapturing in Europe as classical liberalism, right? You're seeing a lot of people in Europe, for example.
Scott, are you saying that only socialists? Are you saying only socialists and leftists can be the agitators? Then, can you say like, are the blue dog Democrats not able to be agitators within the system?
I'm a right winger, but I'm also an anarchist, and I'm an agitator my damn self. So no.
I know, but your statement made it sound like the only ones that are agitating are the socialists and the communists.
It is usually the radicals that agitate further. I'm not saying they're the only ones. You're saying the only ones.
Erudite?
My bad.
Yeah, I just wanted to move off of a tautological argument. Like, we could fight about definitions all day. I just agree with Stephen. Like, there's more interesting things. I'm just wondering if, like, maybe for the sake of this conversation, if we could just prescriptively agree to certain definitions so we can continue on with the ideas of, like, is there space in the political stage for an agitator at all, right? Like, that's a more interesting idea rather than just, like, getting really bent. Like, maybe we need to continue tautological, but yeah, I'm wondering if maybe we can shift on to more talking about.
Yeah, I think we already agreed to disagree slightly on capitalism and understanding what both sides of the fence mean on that, as well as leftists. I think we both kind of already agreed. Like,
Scott, can I ask you? Like, I get that from your perspective. Can you explain to me what's the problem with people not being philosophically liberal anymore? Well, like, is that a problem for you or for leftists?
That's a problem for the West as a culture. That's
okay. So for you. Okay.
No, not for me. I mean that for all of Europe and America and Canada and Australia and New Zealand.
Oh, no, I meant from your perspective, because when you explained it, I thought, yeah, I actually think that's good. That would progress towards leftist idea faster that way. So it makes sense that you would say what you are saying. I got it. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Like I want Enlightenment values and the things that, propagated booms in technology and freedoms and liberties, and not anti-freedom, anti-liberty, and anti-science and anti-technology and anti-innovation ideas like left-wing philosophy.
Okay, wait, I'm going to bite on this for a little bit. Okay, can we argue that instead of saying we become illiberal, that maybe our understanding of liberalism has maybe become a bit more nuanced, that the rights afforded to you by government on paper or the rights protected on paper don't actually really mean that much if we don't have other systems in place to guarantee these things? Keep in mind that the liberal values that you're espousing started in an era when women weren't able to vote or hold property, or when black people were slaves. So I think it's okay that our understanding of liberalism might evolve over time, that this idea that we should be able to own private property, well, that doesn't really mean anything in a place where there's no private property available to buy, or when people don't on average have the economic means available to them to access private property. I think it's really okay
sneaky.
To say that
it's really sneaky what you did there, right? Where you put in like this idea that harkening back to those older ideas, right? Those old school ways of thinking, you linked it to sexism, and by definition, like,
okay, hold on, wait. I'm just going to start screaming. I'm going to start screaming on the panel if you accuse me of doing anything sneaky. I'm not doing anything sneaky.
Right,
but what I'm saying is that
you're
harkening
you're
back to classical
new ideas that are not liberal.
No, those are old ideas.
Yes, you are.
Those
no. Positive and negative rights are not modernity, and they are not liberal. That is not; those are not ideas.
You're working from some
liberalism.
Understanding that is different than the vast majority of people that are talking about this topic. So I don't know.
No, you're trying to add positive and negative rights into the discussion, and then claim that that's a nuanced take of liberalism, and it's not.
It's positive and negative rights were like foundational to the debate over the formation of the Bill of Rights in the United States, over whether or not we have a government of enumerated powers or a government where it only exists to positively or negatively. Like, I don't understand how you're saying this is a new idea. What do you mean?
Destiny, it's foundational to classical liberalism, which is what he brought up.
Are you? Hold on. Let me less aggressive.
You're bringing
are you telling
up
me
the
that positive
idea.
and negative rights are like a modern idea? That this is something that
I'm not saying. First of all, I'm gonna just skip over the idea of modern because I was using modernity in a different way. But that being said, when you're adding positive and negative rights as a means of saying that people are not free unless they have certain opportunities given to them, and the logical definition of that, right, of liberalism under your view, is to then take away other people's property, take away other people's freedom, constrict other people as a means of leveling the playing field to give other people opportunities, and then you're calling this liberalism. It's not. It's not
because
a nuanced take on
this
liberalism.
Because under this dogmatic take of liberalism, where the government only exists, like let's say we have the ultimate freedom in society, and it just happens that 2 families own 2 companies, and those 2 companies employ every single person in the country, and the wages are kept such that none of those people could ever afford any property of their own. Like, would you say that this is a good, ideal, liberal society? Because at the very least, everybody's free to do what they want. Like that doesn't seem very liberal. Like it might be liberalism in name, but like at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, if you want to ask a question, I'll answer it. I would say that the state is what encourages monopolistic tendencies.
You don't think a monopoly could ever naturally arrive?
Well, natural monopolies occurred, right?
So if a natural monopoly does occur, then a state isn't necessary to guard the existence of a monopoly or to propagate a monopoly. A monopoly can
so again, you have 3 types of monopolies, right? You have one provided by the state. You have one which is afforded, which is known as a natural monopoly, which is when a natural resource is completely owned by one individual. That is, like, let's say a new resource that enters the market. Let's say the first person to discover cobalt, and there's only one cobalt mine, right? Now they have a natural monopoly because they're the only individuals that own cobalt, right? Now, what has occurred under America we've never had a monopoly in America that wasn't created by the state. We've had monopsonies, right? Standard Oil being an example, right? Which of course we eventually broke that monopoly up, but that monopoly was already falling. Now that was what's known as an efficiency monopoly, right? And it was an efficiency monopoly because Standard Oil kerosene was like $26 a barrel.
Sure, this is okay. This all goes down. Okay, so firstly, that's not a natural monopoly. A natural monopoly has nothing to do with natural resources, right?
Yes, it is.
It's not. I'm not even giving you an opinion.
It's telling
you.
No, it's not.
No, you are. Hold on. I'll explain for people that are listening that don't understand what you're saying, because what you're saying doesn't make any sense. So a natural monopoly exists in an industry where there is an incredibly high cost to start. There's a big barrier to entry there, right? So for instance, we can say pharmaceuticals might present a theoretical natural monopoly because all of the investment that you need in the tech and everything to get a drug off the ground represents an incredibly high barrier to entry for a new player. So that might represent some form of natural monopoly.
Airlines is another one.
Airlines, yes, true, because nobody can just start an airline. You're not going to buy one airplane and start flying people around the world. That's what a natural monopoly is. A natural monopoly can spring up without any natural resources. There might just be some prohibitive barrier to entry to certain industries that prevent other companies from springing up.
Right, but the problem is that many of those things are caused by the state.
No, hold on. What I just described was purely economic in nature. You don't need any state intervention.
No, it's not.
There's no state airlines.
Give me. Okay. There's so many state regulations on airlines. There's so much regulation, state owned, and there's so much state subsidies into airlines. Every time we have an economic crisis in this country, like large fucking bills are written and we're supposed to be getting these stimulus checks. And then we find out that like 80% of the fucking money is going to large corporations, and a massive chunk of that, almost as much as given to the entirety of the American public, is usually given to the airlines. It is a massively state regulated and massively state funded institution.
Wait, why wouldn't most of the money going out to Americans ultimately go to large corporations? Don't large corporations control most of the stores and stuff that we'd be spending money on in a society? Doesn't that just and employment as well? Yeah.
Okay. So what we're talking about is money in the hands of people that then have the ability to spend it. Now, when you say it then goes into large corporations, that's you're comparing apples and oranges here.
No, it was apples to apples. Apples from one hand to apples to the next person.
Apples and oranges here because we're talking about whether or not the money goes directly to these large corporations.
Money's not going directly to the large corporations. What are you talking about?
It happens all of the time.
What money is going directly from the coronavirus relief? What is the money going directly to large corporations? What does that mean?
Right.
Back in 07.
Do we need to pull up all of these bills and then see exactly what percentage was given in stimulus checks and then what percentage was
stimulus
given
checks
to airlines?
Yeah,
past,
Nobody said
other than
stimulus
COVID,
checks to
other than
airlines.
COVID, when was the last time we gave stimulus checks to fucking airlines?
Especially
Please
airlines
enlighten
are like
me.
the worst
All right,
thing to
let's
bring up
look up-
because airlines are so notoriously
It's the one you brought
unprofitable.
up.
Like, no, I'm saying as an
Yeah,
example.
I'm
like,
only using your example.
okay, but
It's my example because it's a good example, and you don't have a good. It negates everything that what you said.
We have given money to the airlines all of the time. I'm just going to find you some examples.
sure,
because
Please
you demanded
do. Send them in
examples.
chat, bro. Come
All right,
on.
cool.
Does this also reconnect to advocacy and agitators at some point, or are we just have we just abandoned that ship and child? Because like we can abandon it, but I'm not. I'm not
how do we
seeing
feel
the
about
connection.
advocating for things? Yeah, let's get back.
Yeah,
to
let's
that.
go back to agitators.
Okay. Why don't I start? I think that in a society that is highly non-political, like we saw in 2003 with Bill Mayer, who started coming out and politically agitating a lot to wake people up to political concerns, agitators have a place in the political stage. What we're seeing nowadays is that we have a highly political culture. It's highly politicized. Everyone is hyper political. In fact, lots of people claim the personal is political. In a state like this, where people are finding their identity in their political ideology, we absolutely don't have space for agitators anymore because they often add to divisiveness, they make things more dangerous, and oftentimes they don't actually offer solutions.
If there's an issue that, like, shouldn't there be divisiveness if the issue is are we going to bring up like the issue with Black people in the United States? Like, shouldn't there be a divide on that? Shouldn't we be there should be agitators to like alert to that being an issue that needs to be solved.
I'm okay with advocates. Why agitators?
So we're drawing a semantic. Okay, can you explain to me
the? Not semantic in my view.
Sure, I'm sorry. Then could you explain to me how you define the difference?
Sure, yeah. Oftentimes I find agitators are more likely to engage in bad faith. They're there to kind of, I mean, if you look up defined, they're like political troublemakers. I don't think they're necessarily political troublemakers, but they definitely actively try to rile people up to get people engaged in protest and civil movements, whereas advocates do their best to get people engaged in certain things through education, and they often select more peaceful methods of doing that.
But is protests not a very legitimate way to like promote political advocacy? Like, it's part of political advocacy.
Yeah.
But you said that agitators tend to push people towards those activities more rather than through education.
Right, but they use
Or did I
inflammatory
misunderstand?
language. They use inflammatory language, right? Both advocates and agitators and people in towards advocacy. I have no problem with protesting and stuff like that. My concern is when protests move towards riots or when divisiveness in a country becomes more about fighting ideologies than actually shifting ideas. We have divisiveness, but to say that we want divisiveness isn't true. The point of an advocate is to get more people on their sides. If you are advocating for Black Lives Matter, you don't want divisiveness. You want more people to agree that there is absolutely injustices being done against Black people in America and that we need to address those issues, right? My concern is effective advocacy is pulling people into your group to agree with your idea, whereas I'm concerned that agitators in a highly politicized environment causes splitting and doesn't cause any movement on either side towards either ideology.
So you're not saying that, for example, the slogan of Black Lives Matter is an agitator?
No.
Okay,
Okay,
but that
then
agitated
maybe-
people. That
What?
agitated people. Black Lives Matter. I remember when that
When
happened.
you
I
go
remember.
left wing, nothing is agitation and everything is right wing.
Okay, hold on. To be clear, if just the slogan "Black Lives Matter" is agitating you, you have a high degree of snowflake syndrome. You should probably
No,
go
that's
check
bullshit.
that.
Because we all know that there's 4 different types of things that are being said when someone says Black
no.
Lives Matter.
Oh boy.
Right? So when you say Black Lives Matter, you go, is it the statement Black Lives Matter? Well, that shouldn't agitate anybody, right? Or is it the organization BLM, right? Which has, obviously Marxist influences and, has been involved in many controversial scandals between directly gaining money based off of, cultural movements to Democratic candidates or, their leaders, claiming all of these high virtues and then buying multi-million-dollar homes? Or is it like Black Lives Matter, like the corporatist woke kind of like rainbow capitalism, right? So when you say Black Lives Matter shouldn't trigger anybody, again, this is a hearken and a call to the idea of the slogan itself as opposed to all of the things that are represented under the umbrella of that slogan. And it's the same thing when people go like, Antifa, how can you be offended by the word Antifa? Aren't you anti-fascist? Are you a fascist? It's stupid.
This is a fair point. So I think what you're saying is that the problem is because agitators and advocates have all come together, and now even the advocates themselves have to kind of answer for the crimes of the agitators, and the advocates themselves can't effectively advocate because they're lumped in with the agitators. So like a Black Lives Matter advocate might be somebody who's saying like, hey, we need to hold cops more accountable for things that are happening in certain neighborhoods, or hey, there might be ways that we can retrain or address our law system to where we're not having these disproportionate, right? That might be like an advocate. But an agitator might be somebody who's like, we need to defund the police. All cops are bastards. We need to get these fucking pigs off the street. We need to kill cops,
yeah,
right?
it's because
That might be like
advocators have been doing that for a few decades, and it hasn't been working. And ever since they started saying defund the police, people actually give a fuck because they're agitated. So people listen, and there's a discussion. Black people have been talking about like police reform for a very, very, very long time. It's just that nobody gave a fuck until they start agitating.
I don't want to lead us down.
Well, here, real quick, I just want to finish. It's just without getting into the minutia of that, which we can, because minutia is so much fun. I'm just saying that I think that I think if I'm also paraphrasing somebody, you can tell me to shut the fuck up. I think what your data is saying is that like having an advocate is good, and that like a phrase like BLM that's only supported by advocates hopefully wouldn't carry with it the same stigma as all of the agitators that take that phrase and use it as well. That's the issue, is that the agitators end up damaging the work that the advocates are trying to do by making everybody seem like an agitator.
Right.
Specifically,
just to fully clarify my position, just to make it super clear, I'm not saying all forms of agitation are necessarily bad. What I'm saying is if you're in a state of highly politicized people that are already pretty divided, if you agitate an angry bear, that's different than agitating a completely asleep country. And I am concerned that some of the main people who agitate are oftentimes bad faith actors that are less actually interested in results and are more interested in gaining clout and financial gain from a moral movement, which is very legitimately important. That's my concern.
Or
just give it a try.
Yeah, or just going and fucking shit up, which is, and I don't want to lead us down a road where it's like we go into January 6th. But January 6th is a good example. You could talk about how on the broad spectrum and like what most people were there to talk about was like election integrity. But then the agitators ended up taking it too far and then going and storming the fucking Capitol. You can see how something being innocuous can be taken by the agitators to go and use that as basically
they're called
to
FBI
justify
agents,
fucking shit up.
Agitators.
Basically, justifying fucking shit up.
They're called FBI agents, not agitators.
We don't want to do that, do we? We don't want to do that.
It's not.
Are you really about to tell me to talk to me about the Gretchen Whitmer thing?
Oh no, we don't have to do it. Maybe some other time though. But
I gotta poke the bear. I'm an agitator after
you're
all.
an agitator, of course. Erudite. I got a little bit of disagreements here. So you're drawing this distinction between like an angry bear and an asleep bear, right? Like I don't even know what that actually means within the country, right? A country with so many complex issues, and different parties who are like vying for attention, right? For their political goals, right? Like I don't see like what is the asleep bear, right? Like what and where, like when has the bear ever been asleep, right? Especially for things that activists have been pushing for, there's always been a fight. If it's something worth fighting for, if it's something that's been challenging the status quo power, right? There's always an active like counter or a counter argument, like a counter protest, right? It's like so to illustrate what I'm trying to say, like civil rights legislation in the past, right? There was never a point where like advocating for the advancement of African American civil rights wasn't contentious, right? And you needed some agitators during that, right, to help push things along, right? There's never a time where the country is asleep for these things. Not our most divisive issues anyway, right?
Sure. I guess so. When I'm talking, we can throw away the bear because, like, if it's not useful, it's not useful. What I'm really trying to talk about What I'm really talking about is when you have a country who's politically asleep and unengaged versus a country that is highly politically engaged, right? And there's absolutely been times in our history where we have seen high level of political engagement. People are tweeting about it, people are talking about it, people are getting involved, people are highly identifying, and periods where it's really low engagement. Nobody really cares about politics. Voter turnout is terrible. People just aren't talking about it, right? And so what I'm concerned about is I want advocates to be able to achieve their goals, right? And I think what we're seeing right now is people who agitate tend to be antithetical to the movement that they're trying to move towards, right? A lot of times with agitators, you don't need to tear them down because they work against their own advocacy by being agitative and violent, whereas effective advocates often do their best to bring people and include them into their ideas. It's why Martin Luther King Jr. was such an effective advocate, because he made what he was saying palatable to people who otherwise might not have cared that much, right? An effective advocate.
He was considered an agitator.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but I
he
think,
might have been public. Hold on, wait. Before cutting off, he might have been considered an agitator, but that was like a propaganda hit piece. He absolutely was not, and he made sure as much. And there is a difference on how you're perceived between being an agitator.
Yeah, your perspective would change depending on who wins the fight against the bear. You know,
not necessarily. There were people that existed in his time that were far more into agitating than he was, and there is a difference when you look at how polling data goes through people when like riots start versus when protests start. The idea that like protests and like Republicans can scream until they're blue in the face at like or red in the face, I guess. Oh my God, these protests are horrible. They're horrible. They're horrible. But like when people are seeing videos of protesters getting beat by cops and shit, it looks really bad, and the protesters are going to get more support. Conversely, when protests turn into riots and you're getting tons of videos of cities being burned down and shit, well, now you're going to start to lose support for your movement. We can't always just cry that nothing matters because they're going to propagandize in one way or another. Things do matter. It doesn't matter what actually happens. And people on the ground do see what happens in their cities, and they do know there's a difference between violent rioters versus peaceful protesters showing up.
I don't. Well, so
optics are huge. Sorry, Scott, real quick. Optics are huge, and your movement can fall apart if the optics become too negative in the PR standpoint.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's contesting that.
What I was going to say is like, I think, you know, I'm not sure that we can all identify it, or if it's necessarily like a univariate analysis is really going to give us the right answer here. But I do think it's important to recognize that something is different now from the way that it was done in the past. You know, and you know, I would argue that part of it is the philosophical shift of the left. I would also argue that it's also social media, as we discuss, you know, optics and things of that nature. You know, stories being able to go viral in a certain way, and multiple narratives being able to kind of like go out at the same time, as opposed to a controlled media narrative. But you know, like when we look at, like when we compare the civil rights era movement to today, it's not just, let's say, the genius of the charisma of Martin Luther King. People like Stokely Carmichael worked with him. Radicals and, you know, the people that were much more far left, they worked with these individuals and they formed coalitions. And they worked together in a way that I don't see the modern left working together. What I see the modern left doing today is I see good faith actors. We'll say good faith because I would say that anybody, you know, on that part, I'm going to disagree with, obviously, but good faith actors. And then you have people like grifters and things of that nature. But you have this political establishment that is very corporatist and very elitist mindset that doesn't seem to be forming this liberal faction that actually works with the more radical wing to be able to create a cohesive movement that like can get some things done. I would almost argue that the radicals are
to work with liberals when the Democrats are in power and they're still placating to conservatives and are being the lesser evil. So it seems to people who are more on the left than that, that's kind of pointless. The Democrats aren't advocating for them. They're not serving their interests. They're just corporate, whatever the fuck, drain the swamp, whatever you want to call it. But they're not advocating for anything that their voters vote for.
How are they placating to the conservatives? I'm just curious. What do you mean by that? Can you give an example?
Well, it's pretty obvious what she means, right? She's talking about like.
No, I'm just asking for an example.
Okay.
Just one example. Do you have one, Destiny?
I wouldn't make this argument at all. I think liberals have been unbelievably effective this year in office, or Democrats, I should say more specifically, been incredibly effective this year in office.
I don't see the left placating the conservatives in any way.
What? Hold on. We just had Build Back Better. We just had that disaster. That happened, right? It happened.
Okay, we had
you have
a
a
$1.9
agenda.
trillion coronavirus relief plan that was passed under Biden. That was unbelievable. We had the what did it end up being? It was like, was it $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan, which is the largest infrastructure plan passed in the history of U.S. infrastructure plans.
Right, those aren't liberal, right? Like those are.
No, hold on. These are
left-wing.
democratic agendas that were passed by the Democratic Party in a historically divided Senate. In a 50
like I said,
Senate, like,
no, I agree with you. There's certainly victories for the Democrats. I'm just saying they're not liberal.
Oh, I'm not arguing against you. I'm arguing against Prime. Prime asked me what Biden gotten done. I think those two accomplishments are unbelievable.
I didn't ask you what Biden got done. I talked about Build Back Better.
Oh, Build Back Better. Yeah, I mean, but like, yeah, Jesus, this is his first year in office. Okay, yeah, he hasn't gotten every massive mega piece of legislature done yet, but he's already gotten more big legislation passed, in my opinion, than Trump did. Like, Jesus,
Destiny, do you think it's going to get easier for him to pass legislation going forward? Or?
It's going to depend on how the economy is doing when the midterm roll around. Like, if they lose these elections, the Democrats are done for. It's going to be basically a lame duck for 2 years. Oh, wait for that.
Fair enough. Okay.
Unfortunately.
But yeah, I mean, does anybody else? Katie couldn't answer. Destiny wouldn't really make the claim. Does anybody else make that claim?
I know Prime would like to get on that, so I was just giving him the chance to like intervene on that.
Right, I'm looking for the Democratic neoliberal establishment right here, and that's not really what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this historical movements. I'm talking about like community groups and protest groups and things of that nature. They don't seem to have a centrist liberal faction anymore.
So, Scott, I might be just like completely ignorant on American politics, right? But there were talk about like the filibuster, right? There have been talks about healthcare for a lot of time now, years and years and years, right? And as far as I understood it, Democrats are in power, right? So they have a majority. So wouldn't now be the perfect time to make those things happen before they potentially lose that like advantage, and then there'll be a lame duck for a few years, like Health Bike takes it?
Well, the problem is that
because they have that power, correct?
No, they don't really have the power. That's the problem. Is that when
Not
it
with
comes
the
to
filibuster.
passing big legislation through the Senate, if you have literally our Senate is divided in half, and at the very least you need a 50. You need all 50 votes plus the president to do it. But if you have any dissent whatsoever, you're pretty fucked. So the Democrats, like, they have power kind of, but it's just barely.
Yeah, and I understand that, right? It's just interesting that they have that power barely. And then in the Democratic Party, there are people who are supposedly Democrat, but they'll drop these big topic like issues because they are corporatists and they are working for interests that are not for the voters.
But you made the claim that they're placating conservatives. I'm not talking about corporatist neolibs, right? In what way are they placating conservatives?
I don't think that Democrats not doing what conservatives want is like, I don't understand. You think that if Democrats
you made the claim, so I was just asking to back up the claim.
Sure. I take the claim away. You win.
What is the, just curious, what country are you from, or what government?
I'm from Israel. I lived in Germany for a little bit, but
you're not allowed to. Hold on, wait, nobody's allowed to talk.
Stop. Okay, Israel's government is that's a multi-party government, isn't it? Doesn't your government form a coalition government?
Yes, it's a nightmare. Better than the two-party system.
I disagree. So in your system of government, and I think this happened because I remember reading with Netanyahu trying to maintain power recently. But I don't know the minutiae of Israeli politics, but I'm sure there are times in your political party's history or in your country's history where you have like a political party that merges with a smaller party to form a coalition government, right? And then that smaller party seems to have a lot of power in your government, even though it's a small party.
Yeah, that's the current prime minister.
Yes, exactly. But so when people look at U.S. politics, so let's say I were to look at your government and I would say, well, look, your party's in power. They form they have the majority government. They've made a majority government. Why aren't they doing everything? Your response will be, okay, sure, but they had to form a coalition with another party, and if they don't follow kind of what that party's on board with, that party's going to split off, and you're going to have to reform the government.
The thing that has been happening for the past few election cycles and the few past times that governments were actually formed, because Israel goes through a lot of elections, because the margins are so small and like what they build a coalition. So you need 61 like seats to have a coalition.
Yeah.
And they keep like the last 2 governments have been literally 61 seats. So if there's one sick person in the coalition and there's a voting on that day, that law is not passing.
Exactly.
So in this, so
but this is what you're describing.
Similar.
It's the exact same thing that happens in American politics, where even though the Democrats have control, we have our Senate is divided 50-50 right now.
And I understand that, but you see the difference between that is that if my government is made out of 61 seats, they have like 5, 6, 7 parties in that coalition. You have one party that is supposedly advocating for one thing. If the Democrats have the 61 seats of the United States, they are literally supposed to be a bit more cohesive.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and I understand why you would think that, and it makes sense looking at how other systems work. But in the United States, because we only have 2 parties, in reality, we have like a bunch of smaller parties inside of our parties. They're just not official things.
Yeah,
right?
we have
which is why the 2-party system is stupid.
Well, no, in America, but it's effectively.
And it's not really advocating for those things at all.
I just want to say real quick before Fabian says some crazy stupid shit, okay? Sorry, Jesus, okay. It's not just about caucuses, okay? We have 2 huge parties. Right? We have 2 huge parties in the United States, okay? But there are different factions inside of those parties that believe different things. So, for instance, in the United States, we might have very far left wings in our party. So you might have heard of something called the Squad, right? You've got AOC, Rashid Tlaib, right? These are people that aren't lockstep with the rest of the Democrats when it comes to ideology, but they're still in the same party. So whereas you might have like a coalition majority government that has 61 seats and you've got 5 different parties inside of it. In the United States, we have one party ruling, but that party is going to have just as many groups inside of it as like a 5 or 6 party coalition government. Well, that's all I'm trying to say.
Right.
So there's
not
as much.
I completely understand that. It just like it's way less. It makes a lot less sense because then at the end of the day, the Democratic Party gets elected and they can't actually do anything because they're actually a bunch of tiny little parties that can't do anything.
No, pause. So 2 things to add a context, right? If we had a system like yours, Thomas Massey and Rand Paul wouldn't be in the parties they're in. They'd be libertarian.
Israel's system isn't perfect at all. I wouldn't recommend it.
I definitely didn't say that it was perfect. I would say any state isn't perfect because of an anarchist. That being said, when you say that, well, it's better because of the virtue of the fact that it's less complicated to understand that there are caucuses and factions, that doesn't really make any sense. Like in America, we have a representative democracy that is a constitutional republic. We vote for people, right? We don't vote for parties. We vote for people. And so one of the problems that's really an issue in a lot of parliamentary-based systems is that you're not voting for a person whose ideas you believe in, you're voting for a party platform. And as we know from almost every form of liberal democracy within the world, politicians rarely actually do what their political platforms are supposed to be around. So instead, we vote off of individuals that we trust or that we think is better than another person. It's obviously an imperfect system that I don't agree with, but maybe that adds a little bit of understanding to the reason why we have those differences.
I understand those differences. I'm unsure about if the system is so that the Democrats currently right now have this tiny little advantage and they can't even properly use it because they're not unified enough to be able to execute it, then they're basically not very effective.
That's true, but like the thing is that like even in a coalition government though, we run into these same things happening, right? So like in Sweden,
but in a coalition government, I can hold that party accountable. In a 2-party system, I would have to continue voting Democrat. I don't have another choice because it won't go Republican.
So what she's saying is about blame, right? Like who to blame when things go wrong.
But we do that. People don't blame the entire Democratic Party. They blame like Manchin and Sinema. That's who
they blame their representative,
right? Like
and then they vote them out of office if enough people disagree.
Oh no!
We have primaries.
We don't. First of all, we don't. I'm not sure if we actually do. But I think that when we send Democrats, when we give control to Democrats, right? When we rally the troops, say the Republicans are bad, right? Because Republicans want this and that, right? Then people rally the troops for Democrats to do certain things, right? Part of that would be, like, for instance, protecting voting rights. But the Democrats don't, like, at least it's like not happening. And well, we have two bad guys, right? Manchin and Sinema. But there were others. There were other like conservative Democrats who would probably also be troublemakers agitating.
Who's a conservative?
Yeah,
Democrat?
Manchin was speaking. Manchin was obviously speaking on behalf of a lot of Democrats that would end up facing the repercussions of voting for that in purple states. Obviously, Manchin and Sinema were not the only ones that disagreed with Build Back Better. And shit like that, and like the filibuster and shit along those lines.
I mean, I'm just saying, I hope to God they filibuster. I mean, sorry, not filibuster. Primary Kristen Sinema, because it'll be hilarious to watch the Democrats lose because they put some progressive in her seat, and then a Republican will win. A Republican.
Okay.
Yeah. Same with Joe Manchin. Whatever. A fucking Republican would be in that seat if Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema wasn't there.
I literally don't care to argue about like the chances of Manchin and Sinema. Like, oh yeah, like whatever, right? But like she was talking about like basically who to blame. Right, like who? How do you hold these people?
Well, the blame is we just don't have enough Democrats in office. Like, if you literally are winning by 50, or you have like an exactly split like Senate, then anybody that's going to be towards some like extreme in the middle is going to be the most vulnerable member, right? Because they could just as easily hop parties.
When we had a supermajority, right? At least for a little bit. When we had a supermajority, what do we push for? When Democrats have a supermajority, right? They push for the ACA, a Republican plan.
First of all, hold on. The ACA is not a Republican plan.
Yes, it's a Republican plan.
It is just because it was made by Mitt
Romney. Hold on.
Stop.
Stop. The Republicans do not support the ACA. The Republicans did not support the ACA.
Yes, they did.
And we lost a public option by one vote in the Senate by Lieberman. It's the same thing. Okay, so the idea that the Republicans on their own would have passed the ACA is absolutely delusional.
Talking about repealing and replacing it for years,
right? It was
I don't care what was passed in Massachusetts. One state.
The plan afterwards, right? When there was a black guy in charge, then all of a sudden they figured out, oh, I hate this plan. All of a sudden it's socialism. It became socialism when Barack Obama attached himself to it, but it was a Republican plan. That was where that came from. Like, what are you reading history for?
It was a compromise between Democrats and Republican under Mitt Romney, right? And it was modeled after that. The fact that it was a compromise for something, I don't like the fucking ACA. I don't like any of these fucking politicians. I don't like any of these fucking people, and I don't like the goddamn state. But the idea that it's a Republican plan is literally just you engaging in propaganda.
The Heritage Foundation,
TVS.
yes, that's right.
You're
It's a filthy socialist pinko commie outfit, right? That's where that must have came from. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm not. Nobody's saying it's socialist or communist. Obviously the Republican Party has been working on a repeal or has been under the repeal and replace motto for a long time.
Hold on. Sorry.
Regardless of whether they can actually give us something to replace it, that doesn't mean that they aren't against it. Republicans in the right wing in America do not agree currently with the ACA as it is currently formatted.
You're misunderstanding me, right? I understand that the Republicans, right, being the dog shit individuals that they are, right, are trying just to take away the ACA.
Agreed.
Just because Obama put it in place, right? That's like, but they hate it now, right? So the Republican Party, as it stands, does not like the ACA. Right? But that is separate from the origins of the plan, which is what I'm referring to, right? The origins of the plan are from a conservative outfit, a conservative think tank, and then pushed by conservatives, right? Conservatives were on board. They changed their mind, right? You literally have footage of Chuck Grassley talking about how great it was, right? That Obama was on board. And then he realized, oh shit, the party is not down with this. The base is not down with this. And then he have footage later on, and I'm like, no, of course not. I would never. ACA,
because it's not
terrible,
conservative.
Right? But that's not.
The ACA is not conservative. It's a shift in the direction of a larger state.
What? No.
There's nothing conservative about the ACA.
Okay, I think the conservatives, most of the conservatives within office now are like corporatists themselves, right? There's a different flavor of corporatists.
And this corporatism isn't conservatism.
And this, whatever. I don't care. But I mean, it's fine. Republican Party then. Sorry, Republican Party. But then
there you go.
Fair enough. Shit. What was I gonna say about after that? I lost it. Maybe I'll get it back.
Prime, are you saying that people on the right wing only oppose the ACA because a black guy opposed or like proposed it and attached his name to it, or do you think maybe they just like don't
No, he's
agree
saying
with
that the
like?
black guy.
Go ahead, Katie. Or I think
No,
I got my question
I mean,
out. So
he's trying to say that the black guy didn't make it up. They made it up. The Republicans made it up. And then once the black guy was on board with it, that's when they changed their tunes.
That's not what he said at all. I appreciate you
It's
stepping
literally what
in.
he's saying, dude. I'm sorry.
No, it's not.
Like,
Please
that's
don't
what
lie.
he's saying. If you didn't understand that, that's fine.
No, that's not what he.
No, it's not what he said. He
That's
said
not
it
what
was
he
a
said.
Republican plan
What?
until Obama attached himself to it. And so he asked him, are you saying that this is a Republican, that the Republicans only oppose it because a black guy attached?
Okay, here's a question
I
to
don't
cut
agree
to the
with the
heart of this.
question.
Hold
I
on,
think
here's a
it's
question to
silly,
cut to the heart. Let's say that Obama didn't make it, and let's say that it was fucking McCain.
I appreciate
Joe
you guys
Biden.
running.
Just fucking Joe Biden.
First
If it was
Haiti,
Joe Biden.
now
No,
Destiny.
not even-
Who else wants to step in and protect
Oh
Prime?
my God,
I'm
McCain,
not- hold on, I'm not
McCain,
protecting
go
him.
He's
ahead.
not protecting Prime. He's
Oh,
not.
Jesus.
He's
Let's
not.
say that
He's
instead of
about to attack
Obama,
me.
let's say
Yeah,
that
he's about to get him.
let's say a Republican gets
You
an
just
office
answered
instead
the
of
question.
Obama. Do you think they're passing the ACA?
Yes, actually I do. Actually I do. The ACA,
Okay.
what did the ACA do? It left in place the status quo. It left in place the insurance companies, right? It empowered them. It provided more
It
coverage.
left in place the
through-
status quo. Are you silly? How silly are you right now?
Okay,
You
hold on, let's
left
just
in
read
place
the-
the
hold on.
status quo. You know the easiest way to leave in place the status quo? No bill.
Oh my God.
You
So
don't
the
need a
ACA
new
did a
bill to
couple of-
leave in
But
place
hold
the
on.
status
Yeah,
quo.
yeah,
And the ACA did a
I
couple
get
of
that,
pretty
I get
cute
that,
things
but
with insurance too, right? It increases so the age you get down insurance until you're 26.
No,
It,
I get that. Destiny, I get that. Fine.
Cover pre-existing
That's in
condition?
there as well.
Yeah.
But the core, right? The core of the bill, right, leaves the money, the capital, where it is, right? It doesn't challenge them, right? It provides new markets for them. It gives people more access to those markets, but it doesn't actually fundamentally challenge the system. Am I incorrect?
That's correct, but even
Okay.
as it's listed, I don't think Republicans would have ever passed that on their own.
So do you
I
think
disagree.
that
I
Democrats? So
disagree.
hold on. So do you think that the Democrat idea, what it means to be a Democrat, right, is to be anti-capitalist?
The
Or would you say that the majority of Democrats still support capitalism and markets?
No. I guess no. I see where you're going with this. Like, what would a democratic plan, not like a progressive plan, but like a liberal plan, would that look like in opposition to that? And I don't know. I haven't really thought about
It would
that.
look like the ACA.
Well, maybe it looked like the public option. I don't know. Like where you could still
Public
do
option would be.
You could
public
still.
option would be different. Yes.
Yeah.
It would be a little bit more left, right? But
It
the
would be a lot- it
ACA
would be
is a
significantly more left.
change. Is a change to the current system, right?
It would
that
actually challenge
Democrats-
the status. It would leave capitalism in place. Capitalism could do its capitalism, right? But still, there would be
Well,
a
no,
public...
it wouldn't, because that's not how a public option would work.
Uh,
Public option is anti-capitalist.
Well, it depends on how the public option is set up, to be fair. Right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it depends on how the state controls it. If the state can constantly fund itself with taxes on its public option, then it can simply undercut the prices of insurance for everyone else, essentially forcing everyone into the public option via a system of taxation on a burden on the economy. Right. So again, they don't have a profit incentive, so they don't have to actually have a balanced book. They can just tax people to fund their healthcare system if it's failing or not working in some regard, or if they simply want it to be cheaper. Cheaper in the sense that the price the individual pays for the public option costs less, but it's funded on the back end. So yes, the public option is anti-capitalist. What you got was a capitalist one that was with some additional socialized elements in it, right? To have a more regulated healthcare economy and to force people to provide to do certain things, such as
when you had
one of the biggest ones was the
when you
fight to
had-
get people with pre-existing conditions.
when you had and okay, so we're not going to argue on the ACA the entire time, right? Like that wasn't the point. The point was, and I see Aerodad, I see you, right? Like I see that you want to get back to the topic again, but like this tangent was like showing that push and pull, right? So it's not completely out of left field. Okay, when you
It's a very
had
broad topic. We're gonna go on tangents.
yeah, fair enough. Yeah. When you had a base, right, agitating for change, right? They were pushing for a public option at the very least, right? That's what they were going for. That's what Obama made noises about, right? He wanted to make people think he was farther left than he was, right? Like he was.
No, that's what Obama wanted. What do you mean? If there was a public option available, Obama would have supported it.
Sorry, can we say that last part again? I apologize.
If a public option would have been politically viable, he would have supported it. He did. It died in the Senate. They didn't have the votes for it.
Yeah, it just
put
didn't
in place. What's his? I forget his fucking name every time. It was his original chief of staff, then became the mayor of New York. You know what I'm talking about.
He didn't. I mean, either way.
It's
what did he do?
That's important. No, this is important. No, this is important. Someone will in chat will tell me who the guy I'm thinking of. I forget his name every time, right?
Poor Katie.
Rahm Emanuel.
Rahm Emanuel. Thank you, Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel.
He put
Chicago, right?
Yeah, he was in the mayor of Chicago at some point. Rahm Emanuel. Okay. Rahm Emanuel was in charge. He was the front man for that, right? Rahm Emanuel, who has taken incredible amounts of money from the medical industry, right, from the insurance companies, right? Yes, he is definitely going to make this happen. He is definitely the front man that's going to make sure the shepherd, the public option, that'll be the single biggest challenge to the power of and the money of those insurance companies. It was doomed to fail. Obama never wanted it, ever.
Okay,
wait,
real quick.
I know he said it, but that doesn't mean he actually wanted it. Those are two different things, right?
Understand. Okay, when you guys look at like a football team, okay, the coaches, the athletic training staff, a lot of these people are former players or they worked at other schools, okay? Or when you look at like when you look at an esports team, a lot of coaches used to be players. A lot of team owners sometimes were players, right? When you look at government, it's not surprising that people that get involved in energy regulation come from the energy sector. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a conspiracy. That's almost always going to happen. If we're looking for a new regulator for energy or something, it's not going to be like we found like a random dude in the economy and he's like, oh, bro, I want to do this job. It's probably going to be somebody that's highly interested and has had a lot of connections in this industry, meaning it's somebody that's probably already worked in the private sector. I don't think that's like an outrageous thing, and that doesn't mean it's all doomed to fail.
Countries, but like in America, when funding and lobbying and like the way money works in politics is so like when corruption is just legal at that point, like that's a bit different. Like
corruption is not legal in the United States.
Yes,
that's why
no, just because you define corruption differently than how other corrected countries define it. Does it?
Katie, how do you define corruption?
Yeah, what is
how
do you define corrupt? I'm sorry.
Name a European country that doesn't have.
No, wait. What is the legal corruption in the United States?
Oh my god!
If you say it, it's gonna turn into a thing. It's gonna turn into a thing.
Yeah, you're gonna get nailed down. You gotta get nailed down.
That doesn't have political
I'm willing to do it if we want. I'll have the fight again. But like, if you say it's gonna be a thing.
I just would like you to name one European country that doesn't have political corruption.
You know, corruption exists in all countries, but the rules in terms of how money is allowed to transfer into parties and into funding representatives is not the same in America as it is in other European countries. Do you disagree with that?
Do you have a better example? A country that does it better?
That does it better?
Yeah, like a country that has thwarted corruption.
Yeah, he's an ACAB. I don't care. We don't care about this shit. Like, let's talk about what you actually think corruption is. Let's talk about what you think corruption is.
Which is, can you name a country? No,
Scott.
No,
hold on.
Fuck off. I'm just asking a simple question. Can you name one country?
Germany.
Okay, so Germany has a better system with less political corruption than America, right?
Do you disagree with that?
Well, I'm just gonna see, like, you know, what. Let's just do a quick Google.
Okay. All right,
let's see what big scandals
can I bring us back to agitators?
Let's just
actually,
bring some Google search, right?
No. I mean, like, if we want to go down this route, I will go down this right. I mean, I have no problem fighting Destiny on this again. I have no problem doing it. But if that's what we want to do, but before we do this, I want to make sure, Aerodette, you had your hand raised or something, right? Was that?
No, not at this point. I don't even know.
I had my hand
raised. We can just redirect. Yeah.
We travel on this panel. Everything that I do, we travel. So, but okay, Katie, you can say something if you want. If not, I'll fight Destiny on this. It's no problem.
No, you're the fucking moderator, Prime.
I don't give a shit.
Come on, dude.
Fuck you, Destiny. I'm fucking new here.
Okay, maybe can I pose a question? No. I don't know if Katie wants to. I don't want to overstep.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Okay, scream here. Just pose it. Just throw the question out there. Okay, I don't have
Prime,
permission.
were you trying to basically argue that basically there is a base pushing for a certain change, but sometimes the legally elected representative doesn't actually like follow up on the things that their base is voting for? And so part of I'm thinking this was connecting back to agitator. So correct me if I'm misunderstanding where you're going with it. But as part of the reason why you're saying agitators are necessary is because, yes, we might have figureheads step into and say, I'm going to do all these things. But as we know, politicians say lots of things that they're going to do and they don't do. And the reason they don't do it is extremely complex. It's not just because like all politicians suck and are bad or don't want to, right? It's complex, as we've already gone through. Are you trying to basically argue maybe the purpose behind agitators is because individuals like politicians need those loud bases behind to kind of hold them accountable and argue for what they're trying to move for, because we know that the political representative is going to always be slightly more moderate. Oh, there's my camera. Slightly more moderate than maybe the voting base is for them.
So if you're talking specifically about agitators outside of the office, right? If you're talking about those agitators, then yes, absolutely, because being in office has a moderating effect for everyone, right? It's just the way it is. There's a certain level of moderating effect, and we need people to we need them to be held accountable, right? When you are in Washington, right? Like you could like. And leftists complain about AOC, right? When you are in Washington, at some point, right? Like just to get along, right, and accomplish something, you have to, make friends. You have to dilute maybe your own vision. It's a thing that's going to happen to almost anyone, right? And that's okay. Right? That's not necessarily bad, right? It's just that you need people to say, hey, what you're doing is fucked up. It's kind of shit. Put pressure on them, right? March outside the office so they can refocus. Okay, these are my priorities. This is what my base wants. This is what these are the letters that I'm getting, right? All that is a form of agitation, right? Yeah. I don't want to ramble.
Then does all of us agree about what an advocate versus an agitator is? Because in my mind, they're pretty distinct things, but it seems like we're getting used in different ways.
It depends. How do we define liberal?
Don't do that. Come on, man.
Wait, what's a philosophical liberal again? I feel like
my god.
I'm just kidding.
I'm more interested in between negative liberals and positive liberals.
Let's get really let's get in the trenches of it all. You know what I mean?
I actually had something that I wanted to say like really early on when you made the distinction between like advocates and agitators, right? Sure. So I know we said we'll throw the bear out, but I would like to use it if it's okay with you. I actually think that I understand what you're saying, that a country is very like hyper political. I understand that. And I think that's true in a lot of ways in America. But I also think that the political system is very much pushing for that dichotomy, like, again, contrasting to something like Israel, when people can identify with smaller parties and it's a bit more niche and nuanced what they believe in. It's like if you only have two parties to go on, again, it's like you have to say that you're a Democrat, but agreeing with a lot of stuff you don't actually agree with. But if we're talking about agitators, if we're talking about like advocacy for something like African Americans, then I would argue that the bear is asleep all the time. And the bear has been asleep for a very long time. And that's like what you mentioned before. It's like advocates have been talking about like equality for African Americans for ever since African Americans became like, ever since they arrived. Like it's maybe not slavery, okay, a bit after slavery, okay. I'm not going to the historical accuracies, but I think that without agitators, most Americans just simply don't care a lot, and why would they? Like when you go around your day, as long as the status quo is like okay for you, you're not really occupied with making sure that everyone else is also doing okay, that your even values that you believe in, like equity or equality or whatever you want to call it, are being actually preserved. So people are, even though that a country can be like very hyper political, it doesn't mean that it's actually trying to solve the concrete issues that are more like most pressing. Like police brutality is not just an issue for African Americans, it's an issue for white people too. A lot of white people die because police in the United States need reform, but the bear is asleep on that. No one is fighting that fight. And so you see, I don't understand the distinction. I think agitation is advocacy.
Right. It's not about things being too political. It's about things being too divisive, right? Advocates tend to be effective at pulling people into their idea. They use intelligent negotiation skills. They use palatable like lines and quirks to get people who normally just go around, don't ever think about politics. They don't give a shit. They get those people to care, right? And they do it in ways where people are comfortable kind of stepping out of their box and advocating for it, right? And there's tons of historical examples of highly effective advocates. Agitators are divisive in nature. That is how I'm at least defining it right now.
I agree with you.
Really quick. This is why Malcolm X has been looked upon historically as a negative figure.
Don't do it.
MLK
don't do it.
Has been looked. He has been.
Don't.
Are you saying that MLK has not been looked upon as a more like in a more favorable light than Malcolm fucking X? Are you seriously?
The only fucking reason he's looked upon positively, right? The only reason is because there's been a not even a rehab.
Use the term whitewashing. Say it.
Whitewashing. There we go. Thank you.
There
Whitewashing. Of his views. Right. Was hated.
Prime.
He was hated. Right. Like, do you understand this?
I'm not saying 100%. I'm not saying that MLK wasn't divisive for his time. I'm just saying that the motherfucker was not as divisive as Malcolm X, and Malcolm X pushed lefties back then, even farther away from like the civil rights movement because his ideas were perceived as too radical.
Can I make my argument, please? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I'm gonna steal Destiny's argument from like his opening statement. I think agitators have a place. Like I think agitators in a lot of ways, and I understand what you're saying that like agitators in a hyper political environment can cause harm, but I think that when, for example, there's an SJW and she's really annoying and really loud and really screamy, like 2016 compilation like shit, right? Now we have people like me, hopefully like you, other people online in leftist spaces that are doing better job at like advocating for those positions that those batshit crazy people, like they did a lot of harm to those causes, but they're giving place to advocates to then fill up that gap. Like you need that initial divisiveness. It's crucial to any change. I don't think we disagree on that.
No,
I think we do disagree.
Agitators aren't always bad, right? I'm not saying all agitators are bad. I'm saying precisely in certain socio-political environments, agitators are not a good idea, particularly when we see large swaths of these agitators being bad faith actors. They're oftentimes inciting certain forms of violence, right? And they're doing things that turn people off of the movement, the exact people that you need to pull in. That's
then
what
can
I'm
we
saying.
Exemplify this? Maybe because we don't actually disagree, and because
ACAB's great.
You think ACAB is an example for agitators that are not good?
That should cease to exist.
Absolutely. Yeah,
they should go the fuck away because they ruin police reform discussion.
Yeah, then I disagree.
Well, think about it. Think about where places ACAB got put in.
I just got back. Sorry, I got a memory leak somewhere.
Who said sorry? Wait, why'd you say sorry for him cutting you off?
I'm Canadian. It's just like it's my go-to.
Stand up for yourself.
Real quick. Real quick though.
Americans.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Let's God.
Real quick.
Yeah.
I started using the term oath breakers against conservatives, and it works way better than ACAB. ACAB is great on the left. It's a great way to talk to left-wingers that already hate cops. But I'm telling you, oath breakers, I just ask Connor from Counterpoints. He loses his shit when you call him an oath breaker.
That's true.
And then he's like, "What the fuck do you mean?" I'm like, police department. I'm like, police departments regularly violate the First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, and Eighth Amendment rights of the Constitution. They do it all the time. It's part of their policy. I'm telling you, if you're talking to a right winger, just say the police are fucking oath breakers. It's a great way to say ACAB without.
It's so good.
And
it's
like
so
actually
good.
go to them.
And this is my fucking point: is that Fabian and like an anarchist
are getting off on triggering.
Better at advocacy for a thing that you care about. Like that's my point.
Wait a minute.
Right?
Wait a minute. Is he?
That's my point. Yes.
Is that it? No, hold on.
If
Just
you
another
get
term.
right-wingers to want police reformation, if you get right-wingers to say, absolutely, we need better, right? You've got the, what is it called? 8 after late or 8, those policies.
8 can't wait, yeah.
8 can't wait. Those are excellent fucking ideas.
I
If
hate
you
to
get
make
conservative, just wait. If you get conservative people to buy into that, that is effective advocacy, right?
Yeah,
the thing is with ACAB, right?
That is unethical.
Look at the places where ACAB actually got enacted. It was an abject failure, complete failure. Crime exploded through the roof, and very quickly they began to establish another form of basically policing within the state.
True.
What? Hold on. What do you? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my God.
So much truth there.
No,
I understand. We had to make the process. We should have.
God damn.
Oh, God. We're gonna. Sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Katie. Go ahead, Katie.
Erudite, would you say that like effective advocacy is like the ultimate goal? So at any cost, if I can get a conservative to sign my bill, then it doesn't matter what I tell them to make them sign it?
Are you asking? I'm not sure what you're asking here.
I'm asking.
Reframe it for me.
Yeah. So, because like when I'm thinking about something like Oathbreaker, and then you're saying that that's like good advocacy, it kind of like, okay. And that leads me to like thinking that basically if I can sell like police reform to conservatives as like it will hurt Black people more, then it's worth it to do it because it will make them sign like police reform, you know? But the justifications I'm using are not. Would you think that's good? If I can get conservatives to believe that police reform would kill more Black people, not conservatives, people who are racist and hate Black people, okay, not conservatives. If I can get those people to think that police reform would hurt more Black people, should I do that? Is that like good advocacy?
So no, Erudite. It was Erudite. Let's have an answer.
Okay. Do you think that conservatives just want to have Black people be hurt?
No.
Okay. Not really understanding the basis of your question then, right? If you can get a policy passed that reduces the amount of deaths by police, right?
I'm talking about the justification. So the way you sell the reform is my question.
I think she's saying that, like, let's say that there's like different ways that we can advocate for a policy, and some might be more extreme than others. If those extreme forms of advocation end up affecting a new policy that achieves your end goal, is it worth it? Is that good? Kind of like an ends justify the means thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there are definitely absolutely times when ends justify the means, right?
The issue.
Is definitely valid.
Hold on, can you stop talking? Fabian is trying to talk. Thank you, Fabian. What do you
I don't even see him on the page.
I was resetting.
Hold on.
So the issue here.
Before you do that, and before I get away from it, don't worry, and you can apologize to me, Fabian. To Destiny and Erudite. Erudite, you said something that was just fucking terrible, and Destiny signed on to that terrible take. Where was ACAB enacted? Like, what do you think ACAB is?
Every single police department, or there was a huge trend.
ACAB is not a policy. You already fucking know that.
I know that ACAB isn't a policy. That's another reason why it's fucking stupid. Okay, but it was oftentimes paired.
But she says it was enacted.
She's probably.
So when was it enacted?
Okay, let's play again. What do you think?
Enacted?
What do you think she was talking about?
No, I don't know. That's why I asked her.
No, we're gonna think here.
So we're gonna ask the question. She asked the question.
I want you to walk through this in your brain. What do you think she meant when she said ACAB was enacted? What do you think?
I'm asking.
No, tell us.
No, what do you think I meant when I said that?
I know. Tell me what you meant. I'm not gonna have to guess at it because it was
nonsensical. Can you just answer the question?
It was fucking nonsensical.
I want to hear.
So make sense of your nonsensical points.
If you can't answer this question, you
no,
have a really really big problem.
Don't fuck no.
Oh, come
Destiny,
on.
fuck you, fuck you, Destiny. You made a nonsensical point. I'm simply asking you, like, make sense of it. So, what did you mean?
You said it was a terrible take, but if you don't even understand what my take is, how can you even be saying that it's terrible, right? And then you're saying, where was it enacted? You don't even know what I'm saying.
It's terrible because it's nonsensical, because it doesn't make sense, right? Explain. So ACAB is not a policy, so you can't enact the policy. You said the policy was enacted somewhere. Obviously, that's a nonsensical statement. I'm giving you the opportunity. I'm giving you opportunity. I am giving you the opportunity to make sense of it. I'm sure you meant something.
She's trying to, and you keep cutting her off.
Oh, okay, all right, whatever. I'm trying to give you the space to do it.
The major policy reform that came out of ACAB that many people that I explicitly talked to and looked into that were asking for was defunding the police. It was moving money that went towards police into other areas to manage homelessness different, to manage mental health problems different. It was about reducing income to police and defunding them. That's what we're talking about.
Oh, okay. Sorry. That makes a bit more sense. Thank you so much. Great. All right.
How do you not mentally pair ACAB with defund the police? How do these
she said ACAB. She said ACAB. You signed on to that, right? That's not what she said. I asked her.
That's like saying, do you support BLM? BLM's not a policy. What do you mean? It doesn't make any sense. Like, BLM obviously advocates for specific policies, generally speaking, and people that say ACAB advocate for specific policies, generally speaking. That's not that hard of a stretch.
Right. So what I was trying to get at with the Katie discussion between non-swear before PrimeCayes went silly.
Destiny, apologize to Scott, okay?
No, you were being silly. You were being silly. It's okay. It happens. Happens to the best of us. So the issue here is that the issues with policing that are framed from the left, and this is again what I'm talking about, is that the left has been dominated and has continuously been dominated by a philosophy that cannot speak to the right. And that philosophy is, okay, why is it that people are so upset? Why is it that BLM is occurring? Why is it that people are talking about ACAB and defund the police? It's not because they think Pearson v. Ray 1967 is a bad policy because qualified immunity is an issue.
So
and
they're
here's
bad
examples.
advocates.
What I'm saying, Kathy Newman, relax for just a moment and I'll get to my point. So what I'm trying to get at here, is that the philosophy that is coming from this is being overwhelmingly dominated by Marxist thought. And when you are trying to speak to the right, you are unable to do so in a meaningful way. You can laugh it off as much as you want. Sure, go ahead.
Wait, can I just is the right dominated by liberal thought then still, or?
It's mostly pre-modern, I would say.
Can you explain that for the dumber people? I don't know.
So like more so they have an influence. No, I mean an influence of like religious values. Many of them still believe in a moral system that comes from the Bible, even if they're not devout
Okay, so then even if the left
Christians
were being highly liberal and not Marxist, they still wouldn't be able to communicate with the right then, no?
That's an absurd and silly thing to say, because the right is still embracing modernism in many ways. And what is occurring is
why would you
the right
say
is
that? Hold on, why are you
modernism.
Stop squirming around? So I'm asking you, is the right more liberal? And you're saying, well, no, they're more pre-modern. And now when
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Okay, let me ask one more time then. I don't know why you gave me this whole thing spiel on pre-modernism. Is the right like pretty liberal then, or more liberal? Are they 50% liberal?
I would say they're more liberal than the left, obviously.
Okay. So where the fuck, when you have the party of Trump, where is the liberalism here?
I mean, when you talk about the party of Trump, right? You're talking about a populist surge, right? This is for the more Marxist inclined here, reactionary surge, right? To a whole lot of issues that I don't understand why you're trying to bring Trump into this now, as opposed to an obvious
because he's widely supported by the right.
Well, yeah,
and the Republican Party right now identifies with Trump.
That's populism. That's a totally different.
Yeah, I know,
surge.
but right now, it doesn't matter. The Republican Party.
It's not the neoconservative party of George Bush. Now it's like the populist party of Trump. I can use
it's not William F. Buckley. It's not William F. Buckley.
Okay, I didn't mean to trigger you with the T word. So we'll say the populist wing now of the Republican Party.
You're make a point, because I wasn't finished making mine. So make a point if you want to.
I asked you a question. I was asking, do you think the party of T-Man, I don't know how to say that in an unoffensive way, the populist wing of the Republican Party now, is this a highly liberal party?
I wouldn't say it's highly liberal, but I would still say that their axioms in many ways are liberal. Some of them are shifting towards a more nationalist view, a more populist view, and getting away from liberalism in some degrees. I'm not saying that this is a problem solely on the left, right? I'm simply using the left because we're currently talking about ACAB and BLM.
Well,
right?
sure. The reason why I'm saying this is because your initial statement, and maybe I'm just not hearing it. It sounded like you said, and maybe I'm wrong, but it sounded like you said the left has lost the ability to communicate with the right because of their Marxist or illiberal thought. But it seems to me that populists in general in the United States are tending pretty far away from liberalism. So it just seems strange to me, like it almost sounded like, or it felt to me in my feelings like you implied that the right wing of this government is still like fairly liberal or values. That doesn't seem to be the case.
No, I fucking hate the GOP too, and they have their own problems, right? What I'm talking about, however, is that many on the right, most on the right, still have a belief in certain things like the sovereignty of the individual. This is something that is obviously dying on the left.
Wait, the right believes in this? When they're talking about making abortion illegal, or when they fought to keep gay marriage illegal, or when they're pro-war on drugs, or when they're massively against immigration? Like, what part of it?
So again, I understand you're trying to derail a good point that I'm making because you don't want your side being attacked here. Okay, but again, abortion is obviously a situation that is is the pre-modernism we're talking about, right? Like, and it's also, but it also could be a modernist, belief in value of life. There's a lot of different takes you can take on abortion, and the reason that the right has always believed that is something totally separate. Again, now you're getting into an entirely separate debate that we would have.
Can I ask you a question, Scott?
Sure. I really just wanted to finish the other point, though, but go ahead.
Do you want to?
I really do. Really
go
deeply.
Ahead. It's okay. Take back the Kathy Newman thing. Take it back.
The what?
The Kathy Newman thing.
I'll take it back.
That was a pre-modern insult, but now we're moving into the populist part of his
argument. No, what I'm getting at is when you look at things like BLM, when you look at defund the police, right? They are almost always coming from assumptions that cannot communicate effectively to the right, which is that systemic racism, they're using numbers justification of, an over-representation of blacks being killed and or beaten by the police, and this proves
science
racism,
doesn't help
right?
with conservatives.
I would say the exact same thing with the left. We could talk about.
I bet you would.
Oh no, that's not.
This point is so weird.
What I'm saying is when you come from a place and you say, look, when the right doesn't like policing, you have to communicate to them how there is a constitution that is being eroded, how police are being used in a certain way that gets away from their constitutional rights, how their individual liberty is being disenfranchised.
Wait, but that's literally what leftists argue. ACAB and defund the police as an anarchist message.
But when it is colored as the main image being one of racial justice, and you are talking to the party of when you are talking to a party made predominantly, overwhelmingly of white people that are, it's not fucking racist when you say that a majority.
What do you mean by white people then?
When you are talking,
you make the fuck out of him. You use the R word. That's like
it obviously makes a difference.
He's gonna get off on a tangent.
Yeah, I mean, we're already there. But like, explain. What does it? What does it mean?
If racial equality triggers you, I don't know what you are.
White people in general. Okay, I don't think Stephen Bonnell here is triggered necessarily by racial equality. I don't think. I'm gonna assume, I don't know her. Erudite is not triggered by racial equality, right? So just white people, having a majority of white people doesn't mean anything, right? It has to mean you have to add something else to that, correct?
Do you really want to get into me with this PrimeCayes? Because I'm gonna fucking destroy you on this.
No, I have a question.
No, you're fucking not. Let's do it. Fuck me up. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What comes into the arena? What difference does it make when you're talking about a movement? When you're talking about a movement that's philosophical black background, is based upon oppressor and oppressed dynamics, and has institutional racism built into their movement, and is against things like colorblind laws, and is specifically against the Constitution. If you read any critical race theory, or you read any of these academics, or you actually listen to the people that they're drawing inspiration from, it is anti-Constitution, it is anti-individual liberty, and it is anti-white so many fucking times. It is fucking obvious.
Make your point so I can ask you my question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you very, very quickly explain to me what an oath breaker is so I can then make my point?
So when you
I just want to make sure I got it.
When you're a police officer, right, or you are a soldier, right,
Mhm.
you swear an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against enemies, both foreign and domestic, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So I call police oath breakers because of the regular violations that police departments do, such as civil asset forfeiture, the way that they curtail people's ability to protest, the way that they enforce unconstitutional gun laws, the massive expansion that is obviously against the Fourth Amendment in terms of right to search and seizure, that these things are not a few bad apples that are cops, right? This is not like one racist cop that, like, you know, just fucking hangs out by a fried chicken joint waiting for a black guy to beat up, right? Like, this is this is a system of individuals, right? That, well, I'm just trying to imagine like the most racist thing possible for a cop, right? So it's when I say it's an oath breaker, right? I'm saying that they have violated their oath, and this shows that they are a dishonorable people.
So, Erudite, when I asked you that question, what I meant was basically, if I can convince a bunch of conservatives to sign a bill that is for police reform, but the way I'm convincing them that is by saying a bunch of stuff. I'm explaining the wrong things. I'm saying these things are bad, even though I don't think they're really bad. I don't think they're really the problem, but I'm focusing on those stuff so they'll sign my thing. Do you think that's ethical?
I mean, fundamentally, if we can do anything to reduce the amount of like police, like instances of police brutality within America, I think, yeah, I guess I'm
even
a bit
if I have to trick a bunch of okay, so if I can trick conservatives into thinking that they're actually protecting property rights by defunding the police, then I should just do that.
Okay.
Listen, Katie, nobody's saying by any means necessary on this. It's just, how do you go about the messaging of it? Okay.
Yes.
Like, how do we talk about these things?
I completely understand that. It's just that if you're going to say, hey, just use oathbreaker with conservatives, that really helps. To me, that kind of sounds like, okay, Fabian, don't be mad at me. It's just an example. I'm not comparing. It's just to illustrate a point. So if I tell a bunch of Nazis that killing Jews isn't good because, I don't know, they'll get less like slavery work, I don't think that's good. White. Sure. That's not a good justification to
what we are talking about is rhetoric.
Right? That's my
argument. If you believe that rhetoric is unethical, then you probably should quit all debate panels.
Or negotiation.
Because it's literally the art you're doing right now. You're trying to convince people with your arguments that you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, if you don't think that negotiation...
Not all rhetoric is ethical.
Do you believe that negotiation is unethical?
No, that's not what I'm saying, though. That's not negotiation.
I mean,
do you think compromise
policy establishment is absolutely negotiation? To act like nobody knows what's going into these bills seems a little ridiculous. And in part, when we're talking about oath breakers, that's more of like a socio-political movement where you're trying to get average voters to believe in an idea, right? If we could use, I don't know anything about oath breakers. I literally just use it as an example because I can actually imagine certain of my clients, because I often work in forensic settings, and a lot of people who engage in criminal behaviors are very right-leaning a lot of the time, not all of them, right? But if you can convince a bunch of people that are far right, which are often also police officers a lot of the time, right, that the 8 can't wait policies are a really good fucking idea, that is only going to be good for people that act like you're like tricking and lying to them. Feels like a really dishonest representation of what I'm saying.
How would you do that? Because this is what she's trying to get to, like the rhetoric to trick a far right individual into that, right? Would advocate for policy outcomes that would be radically different from what the left is looking for in the first place, right? Like, the rhetoric actually matters. You can't just say anything to the other side, right, and expect that they're going to come together with you and accomplish your policy goals, right? Like, it actually matters, like what you're saying, right? So if the far right likes to use, and that's what they do, they like to use the police as a tool of racial oppression, well then, like, saying that well, we need police reform because things have gotten too out of hand, right? Like if you want to better protect the white majority, right? Well, then these reforms will make it happen, right? That'll lead to different things, right?
I really want to like clarify. Maybe that would help. So I think rhetoric is important. When I talk to people, when I talk to dudes about like women's rights, I don't say the patriarchy because that would trigger every dude ever, and they'll just won't hear me anymore. So I don't use words like the patriarchy. I don't say toxic masculinity, although it's stupid, but whatever. I just don't use those terms because they're not very effective. What I'm trying to say is basically when people have certain resistance to certain ideas, for example, like if you understand what defunding the police means in terms of policies and what it's meant to produce in terms of outcomes, you would have, the only way you would resist to it is if your position is like, I'm not gonna say that you're just a racist, okay?
But
I think
hold on.
You guys have no idea.
Defund the police doesn't mean anything. Like even people that would say it don't know what it means. I think that's
you have no. This is so
so
clear.
if people don't know what it means.
No, I'm saying that this is like a common thing that would happen in every single Reddit thread. Okay, I saw this happen a million times. Somebody would say we're advocating for defund the police, and then somebody would be like, "This is stupid. We can't cut funding to the police." And then somebody else would show that like, they don't mean like take away all the funding from the police. They mean that we're gonna like reallocate it to other sectors. And then someone else would go, no, we don't mean reallocate it. We actually mean defund. We're gonna do community policing. And then somebody else would show up like, no, well, we want to increase funding for training, but then like allocate it to different sectors for social services. And ideally we would work towards community policing. And then someone would say all police are actually institutions of defense. That was not true. The idea that everybody knew what defund the police meant, even among the people who were advocating for it, they would fight amongst each other all the fucking time.
No. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
Katie, by its very
this is all proving my point. In past movements where the left has achieved victories and pushed the country forward, what has occurred is that the radicals and the moderates formed a coalition, and the moderates were liberals that were able to speak to and understand the right. Instead, what you have is a whole bunch of people that live in fucking echo chambers that have no idea what the right even thinks or believes. Like, and a prime example of that
what the right thinks or believe is wrong and immoral and unethical.
Exactly, because
then
you don't know
maybe
what
there
the
isn't
they
a
believe.
bridge to get.
You don't know what they believe. You people in this panel and
no, I
listen,
know what they believe.
For crying the fuck out loud, you don't. Most Republicans and most conservatives are against the war on drugs.
They don't seem to
all of them
support
are
any
against
a lot
policies.
of them. I don't know if it's a majority, but a lot of them, yeah.
You would think if they're against it, the policies would go through, wouldn't it?
Well, no, you have a GOP that doesn't believe in that. But when you talk to right-wingers, right?
Well, I guess it all works out then.
Well, of course, obviously, like fucking, I hate politicians. Like, no news here. What I'm saying is, when you're talking about,
we're talking about policy, and then you're saying that politicians are.
They're against the war on drugs, but they're for the accoutrement of the war on drugs, right? They're for stop and frisk, right? They're for the prison industry. Like they're
probably unpopular with Republicans.
Okay.
Like, this is what I'm talking about. You guys live in a fucking echo chamber. You don't understand. Like, literally just go into right-wing spaces. They're not for, like, the only things they disagree on is the way that the people talk about these things.
Just
and
as
they
a
don't
real quick fact check, so
police.
Majorities of Democrats, 69%, and independents, 54%, support decriminalizing drug offenses. However, most Republicans, 59%, oppose this change, while 40% are in favor of it. This partisan gap is consistent with Gallup polling that has found that Democrats and independents are more supportive than Republicans of legalizing certain types of drugs.
Look, I'll take that as a sizable minority. I do have issues with when you break down by political spectrum polling. It tends to do a really poor job and tends to oversell older individuals with that identify as conservative because of the way that they reach out, and they also
hold on. Wait,
stop. Conservatives.
It doesn't. What you just said, they overrepresent older people. That's because older people are probably more likely to vote.
But we're not talking about just voting.
All that matters is voting. You don't matter as a citizen if you don't vote.
That's so not fucking true.
That's how our political system is built.
We're talking about policy.
Yes,
people
policy.
Don't get to it.
Oh my God, you guys are jumping on single shit, and you're like, I feel like only Not So Erudite is the only one here that is able of actually like grasping the fucking meta narrative that I'm trying to discuss here, right? Like, if you want to create
You're so
which is
smart,
hilarious.
Erudite.
Yeah, dude, you're fucking galaxy
Erudite.
brain, dude.
But what I'm trying to say
Erudite,
is
teach
that
me.
if you want a right wing, if you want to have support for policy, you're going to have to talk to right wingers. And when you have people on the left that are communicating in using almost all of their justifications are based upon oppressor-oppressed dynamics, instead of things like, hey, we're against the war on drugs because it's ineffective, it's not helping, it's hurting people, it's illiberal.
Is there anybody
We
on
are
this panel
going
that-
over
wait,
the-
hold on. Is there anybody on this panel that disagrees with that? I don't even know who you're arguing against right now.
She was literally, Katie was literally saying that Republicans that we don't want this and that we can't have this
No,
conversation.
but didn't Katie, hold on, Katie, did you not say earlier
that
that you use different rhetoric when you're talking to different people?
I did.
Yeah, literally everybody on the panel agrees with it. I don't know why you need a 5-minute explanation.
One
We have to talk to
statement as a
Republicans.
no, you're trying to cherry pick one statement and then ignore the fucking argument. Which is that she said that they have immoral ideas. She said that they were racist.
No, that's not. No. What she
said.
said was that if you had a full understanding of the issue, it seems hard to believe that you would be opposed to what was going on. That doesn't preclude her from talking in a different way.
Fucking lying, Destiny. Stop. She specifically said they were racist
Destiny,
and that they
how
were
dare
immoral
you.
people.
Hold on, yeah, first
and
of
that
all,
we
I don't even-
couldn't build
hold
a
on.
bridge to them.
I'm not lying for this person.
You
I
might
don't
not
like
be
this
lying.
person.
You might
Hold
just be
on.
too busy playing video games
Hold on.
instead of
Okay.
paying attention to the
Do we want to poll the panel and see who has a better understanding of what she was saying?
I mean, why don't we, I guess just ask Katie. Like,
You just fucking asked her. You just asked her.
I'd rather
She
talk
fucking
for Katie
told
more.
you.
I think I rather.
me too. I also want to talk for Katie now.
No, Erudite, you have to teach me how to understand like what Scott's saying because I'm obviously not getting it. So
I
and
mean,
you're the
I
only
think
one
you
who
and I-
does. So.
You and I definitely disagree about like extent because you're kind of taking the argument, which I think is to some degree starting on the lines of what Scott was saying of being like, I agree that absolutely. I'm literally saying advocates need to learn how to use wise rhetoric to get different people, right? That's how you
I
bring
agree with
people
you.
in. I don't think anyone's agreeing with that, right? You are basically asking to what extent am I willing to go with that, right? Are you willing to be like a full-on grifter basically, or are you willing to like lie? I'm basically saying I'm dubious about that. Give me the context. I absolutely think that there are some times where the ends do justify the means, but it needs to be very, very careful in when you're doing that, right? I wouldn't make that as a rule. I would make that as maybe an exception. So give me an example and we can chat about it. But it's a difficult thing to stick a finger on.
I'd want to clarify because maybe I'm coming off like more strong than I'm supposed to. I think that, like Destiny said, look, nobody knew what defund the police actually meant in terms of policy and stuff like that. And I understand, but that's the issue, right? Because if we're just talking, because most people, when they're talking about political advocacy, they don't actually know the policies. Those policies are not even, like, bills aren't actually written. Like, people don't understand. They use slogans. They use shortcuts. They use ACAB. They use BLM. It's not, there isn't a policy for BLM. That's not how it works, right? But because that's how political advocacy works, then it becomes very difficult to then. What I'm arguing mostly with people is ideas, and it seems a lot of the time the right-leaning people that I argue with Scott are worried about how Black people perform a lot of crime and how that's an issue, right? And how that needs to be stopped. So it's kind of disingenuous to say.
Katie, no.
No. I'm gonna finish my.
No. If you're gonna attack me, that hard,
Katie, finish, and then Scott, you can reply, please.
Yeah, no, I'm just doing a quick fuck off on that.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Keep
Bring back the one. What did you call it before?
Kathy Newman.
Yeah, Kathy Newman.
Newman.
There you go.
So what I'm talking about is when it seems like the opposition to certain ideas and to certain policies are driven from, if we're talking about African American issues, like racial animosity. And to pretend like that's not a big part of people objecting to certain policies is very disingenuous. And it's not going to help. So I believe in rhetoric, and I believe that there are ways to talk to people who maybe just have unconscious biases, people who are racist like Doobie, who was here at that other panel the other day. You know, there are ways to talk to him to make him less racist.
Doobie?
There's a way to bring him to our side, right? I'm not saying there isn't, but with Doobie, it's not about like explaining to him about like killing less white people. You need to make sure that he's okay with killing less black people.
Oh
you know?
my God. Prime, two things.
Yeah,
Can I say something?
Let's Scott respond and then half-baked take.
Doobie's not here to defend himself. But
he
I mean,
doesn't need to. He can't.
I also understand that you probably don't understand Doobie's character, and I mean that in more ways than one. To anybody in the know is in the know. That being said, this idea that Republicans have this obsession with crime statistics, like every conservative in America is just running around screaming 1350 memes all day long, is just fucking stupid. And it's unhelpful.
Do you believe in systemic racism?
No.
Then fuck you. Then fuck you.
Then fuck you.
Then you can't argue about this. This is
actually,
what I mean.
I can.
You not understanding what systemic racism is?
Oh,
is
no,
exactly
I understand.
what I mean.
I understand your Marxist bullshit philosophy, and I think it's evil.
I am so Marxist. I even know who Marx is. I read all the books. That is how Marxist I am, you know?
Yeah,
that's why I care about systemic racism in the United States, because Marx...
That being said, I understand that you are trying to push an evil philosophy that you probably likely don't understand. But the issue here, right, if we want to bring it back to reality here just a little bit,
reality
is that
that's where we're going.
You're not going to get defund the police as a winning
From people
message.
who don't understand systemic racism. I agree. That's been my point.
You are not going to get... I love that the left, and this is so beautiful, I love that the left believes that if they just educate the right, these dumb right-wingers, that they'll magically believe their philosophy.
They're too stupid. To get it.
No, racism is a lot more powerful than education, I'll tell you that.
If you honestly believe that, then I don't know.
You know, I sat down with Marx, and that's what he told me. So I'm just like repeating what he said.
Can I go?
Okay.
Yeah, help you poor thing.
You called me out and several other people as if we're obsessed with black crime, right? And so I'm taking umbrage.
You're not obsessed with black crime. You don't understand systemic racism.
No, I fully understand systemic racism.
No. Let's
that it doesn't exist.
Let's separate Scott from like the larger movement, because Scott's an individual. So like, let's not say like what he believes, right? So Scott's an individual. Sure. He has his own thoughts on these things. So yeah.
I think that's actually worse. I'm not arguing against some like ethereal group. I'm arguing against Scott.
Right, and because I don't agree with you.
Do you think Scott is racist?
Yeah. Do you think Scott's racist?
Can we hold on before we go down the is Scott racist hole? Hold on before we go down the is Scott racist hole. I have one question for fucking Katie.
Do it.
Two things. One, I just spoke to Doobie. He didn't seem fucking racist. I don't know what happened before, but I just wanted to put that out. He doesn't seem like a fucking racist. Two, don't you think you should be more articulate in your rhetoric when you are going out into the public square and trying to get other people to agree with what your position is?
She already agreed with that. She agreed with that.
Can I answer?
Yeah. No, she doesn't.
No, she doesn't.
She agrees with it.
No, she doesn't.
Hold on. She agrees with it by saying that she agrees with it. But
then
you
ask me the question and then I can answer.
Anytime someone's talking about,
and then we'll talk about Scott's racism.
About
policy. Katie, would you agree? Katie, would you agree?
She wants to say if you don't understand systemic racism,
Marx
you're just part of the
problem.
problem.
To spread your idea. Oh wait, that's his on there.
I have Marx on the phone. He and I are lovers.
Don't you think like Dems would often like use crime statistics to like that they would end up being slightly more right when it like favors their like political positions, that they'll like use crime stats when it's favorable to them? Like we could see how this could go both ways, no?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding your question. Try again, please.
Like
I'm not erudite. It takes me a while.
No. When it comes to ACAB and the messaging behind ACAB, right? We see right-wingers pushing this, and you say they're pushing it most often for a racist...
No. That's not what I'm saying. The entire point that I'm trying to make is that some arguments, you can just sit down with someone, and you can see that the issue is that they don't understand the policies and they're confused by the really offensive slogans, right? And with those people, once you explain it to them, they'll come to your side. Other people are not as forthcoming because they have other internal ideologies that are propelling them forward, right? And that's what I'm suggesting. And just to make it clear, I do think I can be more eloquent in the way that I'm speaking, but we've been talking about agitators. This is my role in this panel right now. Nobody, I mean, if Prime is not willing, Prime was trying, but I feel like I'm a better agitator right now.
You are.
Trust me, in a different panel, I would be the one being like, don't you think ACAB is kind of harsh though? Because sometimes I can play the sweet, nice person, bring the racist person a bit closer to us by protecting them from the mean black person, right? So I can do both. But you're not mean, Prime. If you were mean, I would be helping Scott against you. But we're double teaming.
Wait, did you vote for Biden?
Yes. What? Yes. Why? Yeah. What? Where would that come
What
from?
other choice would he
He
have?
didn't vote for Biden. I was gonna say he's not mean and he's not black, so we don't have to worry about
Hey!
Oh shit!
Scott, do you want to talk about systemic racism?
Voted for the only pro-war candidate in decades.
So hold on. I want
You're
to say
right, he
something.
should have
So-
voted
pro-war
for the
candidate. Wait, wasn't
Republican.
Biden the one where we actually left Afghanistan under him?
Yeah, like hold on, Scott. Wait for Biden. Wait for Biden to go into Ukraine and Russia before you start calling him pro-war. Okay, let him do that.
I'm just basing off all of his speeches. You know,
Okay.
He said that we needed to be in Somalia and we needed to be.
Yeah, but his actions
he
have
just went
been
to leave
extremely opposed to war, right? Because he's
No.
pulled out of Afghanistan.
Pick a tenny. Just do your research.
Wait, wait.
Don't say do my research. Don't say do my research. I do my research.
What research?
Fucking
What are you
enlighten
talking
me
about?
The
on
Biden administration has given hundreds of millions of dollars to Eastern European companies to produce and manufacture small arms and munitions to.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
arm rebel
you're
groups.
saying that we should have cut off every single deal that we had on the books for every other country that we consider an ally for, like arms and military? Should we have just shut down our entire?
Yeah,
private
he's an
military-
ACAB.
Yes.
Destiny,
Okay,
Jesus
Destiny,
Christ.
You're right.
You want him?
Destiny,
I don't know why I'm
Destiny,
arguing.
Don't try and reframe shit with your bullshit. That's not what I
I'm
said.
not trying to. Hold on. No. What you
Yes,
just
you
said-
are.
You're
Yes,
trying to
you
make it sound
are.
like he's
Don't
just-
lie.
Try to make him sound stupid.
Call me a liar.
Because you
fact
took
of the
what I
matter
said
is-
and then said something completely different. It's such a straw man that it's absurd.
Okay,
I
then
won't let you do
then
it
at least-
because
then
just
at
because
least
you
just
talk
say-
fast.
Don't let
go
him,
back to
Scott.
just make it so that before you say anything, just say like, by the way, I'm an ANCAP, so my frame of reference on this is different than 99% of people on Earth. I think that Biden is a warmonger president. At least say that. So
You're right. You're right. Hold on, pause. By the way,
wasting time trying to respond to what you're saying.
Sorry. I'm a moral person, so my frame of reference is very different than the other 99% of the people on the planet.
Well,
And
you
so
know,
I
yes.
when you
don't like
figure that
warmonger
you're part of the
Except
1%
Erudite.
with a moral
Erudite.
compass, it might be time to start questioning that moral compass. You know?
Look. Let me try to. Okay. So
You're the
erudite,
majority.
What? I'm trying to. Okay. So erudite, right? Like you would maybe agree. Maybe this is what you're trying to get to, like that. For instance, the people in Portland, right? Where they had all those protests. They had that anti-cop zone. I forget what it was. Someone else can tell me.
Chaz. Oh no, wait, that was Seattle.
Chaz, right? Yeah, right.
It became Chop, right?
Or was that Seattle? Yeah. But in any case, like there were protesters, and it was like things got intense in Portland, like super intense, right? Like I think they were disappearing people off the streets of Portland. Like that one moment where that's the thing that happened.
No. That one video where somebody gets pulled into a
Yeah,
van.
people were trying to say like the FBI was disappearing people. That
Yeah,
was
dude,
bullshit. People got
that
booked
was-
for
that was
indictments.
bullshit.
That was that.
Wait,
that
hold
was-
on.
That guy,
No.
I think that specific video, that person had thrown a Molotov cocktail not even
Hold
like
on. Okay,
20
all right,
minutes
hold on.
before.
I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do this.
There was
We
a
can
lot
do
of
some other
violence in
time.
Portland.
The point is that
Do you
yes,
agree
there's a lot
with
of
that?
protesters. Yes,
Okay.
there's a lot of protesters. Anyway,
A lot of
and
rioters.
that, like
Use the R
that
word.
the Portlanders could might have broadly agreed with their protest, but because of how intense it got, and it got intense, I think we can all agree on that part. All right, got really fucking intense. That the protesters turned on them, right? Like sorry, the populists turned on the protesters, right?
True.
Based. Okay. Yeah.
Would
Yeah,
disagree with that.
and I mean, we saw BLM people actively calling those people out and being like, "Fuck off! Stop doing this shit." I'm just saying, I think major movements need to do that more.
True. Fuck
You
off.
I
Ryan.
agree with
You're
you.
Yeah.
right.
Problem
Sorry.
solved.
Agitators.
Sorry.
Wait a minute.
I'll tell you- I'll
Hold
tell
on.
you
Here's,
when
hold on,
police-
Scott. I gotta get addresses because she's been saying this the entire night. It's been bothering me, right? Because you've been associating agitators necessarily with violence, right? That those two things aren't synonymous. Like agitators does not equal violent protesters, right? at least agitators, in the way I'm thinking of a political agitator, does not necessarily say that we have to burn down a fucking like a burg, I don't know, like a high-end store. I can't think of one right now. I'm poor.
Louis Vuitton store?
Yes, Louis Vuitton.
Go get that Gucci bag.
Get that Gucci bag. Exactly right.
Because you're banned from the...
Those things, so that really bothered me about your definition, right? So then you end up tying that, like you take the next step, when we're talking about these protesters, like, oh, well, people aren't pushing those violent protesters out of the movement, right? Well, that was always happening. That was always happening, right? People who were shouting ACAB were also saying, hey, like, don't burn down these stores, right? These like black-owned stores that happen to be around, right? And to show what? To show what? I don't know, right? Like agitators get that, right?
When your slogan is literally all cops are bastards.
Goddamn right.
What the fuck do you think is gonna happen with your movement? I couldn't think
Hold
of
on.
that mentality if I tried.
The protest that Martin Luther King was in got violent. They got violent too, right? People.
Yeah, but
like,
when they
you
got
can't
violent,
control everyone there. That doesn't mean
they
that
did
necessarily.
a lot of work to control the people there.
Yeah, that's what happened too. And during the BLM protests, right? Yeah, there was a lot of work done. There were people who would surround troublemakers,
Sure,
right?
We're not talking about the we're talking about the slogan. ACAB is a slogan. Literally, is built in to be divisive. It's literally the most aggressive fucking like.
So hold on, but hold on. Are you saying that? Like, if not for ACAB, right, then there would have been no violence on the streets ever. That wouldn't have been a thing that happened. Okay, good.
Nobody's saying that. Prime. Nobody's saying that.
I'm going to borrow a Fabian word. I'm going to say it's multivariate. There's a lot of different factors at play here that would gradually build something towards having a higher proclivity versus violence versus not. I don't think Sean Hannity on his own caused January 6th. I don't think Donald Trump on his own caused January 6th. I don't think any individual oathbreaker or whatever those guys were caused January 6th. It was an amalgamation of a ton of different actors working in conjunction with each other to propagate false information that eventually caused that event to happen. Same thing with a lot of the rioting that happened too. I don't think that it was just one thing, but I think we can definitely point to some things more than others that probably caused it. And BLM as a slogan is probably one of those things. Or I'm sorry, not BLM, but ACAB.
Okay, absolutely, BLM is one of those things.
But, so you point to it,
God damn it, Scott, don't derail. No.
You're saying
I
it's
think
not Sean Hannity's fault by himself. You're saying it's not Donald Trump's fault by himself. But then you're talking about ACAB like it's a problem. So are we saying...
I'm not saying ACAB by itself is a problem, but I'm saying that all of the rhetoric that goes along with that highly divisive language.
Destiny literally said...
Even on its face. Even on its face.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I think another thing...
Even on its face, it's ridiculous because
I think another thing
doesn't represent what they want.
No, I think another problem...
People are going to get ultra mad when people say bad words on Twitter, and then you're going to say, oh, divisive rhetoric. You can't cry about that while saying that people are fucking traumatized, okay, because white people say the N-word on Twitter.
What am I mad about Twitter? Don't put that on me. What am I mad about Twitter?
Oh my God.
You have to admit that we've talked all this time about how speech has power and hate speech is, and I guarantee you if I go through your VODs, you've said, oh, hate speech can lead to violence, and this speech can lead to violence, and this speech can cause violence. If you're going to say that, you can't turn around and go, oh, who cares if I have literally the most divisive slogans in all of fucking history. You guys should just get over it.
Oh my God.
Because it's a slogan that doesn't say violence, right? Like, the divisive violence. No. Hate speech,
split hairs, dude.
No.
Come on.
Destiny's trying to be really fucking sneaky. I won't let him get away with it, right? You are trying to say hate speech, right?
It's not sneaky at all.
Holy shit, shut up. Let me actually get to this, right? Destiny, you included, you said, you want, and one breath you said hate speech, right? Hate speech causes certain outcomes, right? Then you add that to divisive rhetoric, right? Then you make that leap to divisive rhetoric as if those two are the same thing, right? As if ACAB is fucking hate speech, right? You sound like one of those fucking Blue Lives Matter motherfuckers.
ACAB is hate speech. It is.
Oh my God. Well, there it goes. Oh. Thank you.
Thank you. Your definition, by your definition of hate speech, it would be, right?
Wait, there are better historians than me on this panel. Didn't Blue Lives Matter? Didn't that start after somebody shot and killed 2 cops in a parked cruiser in New York?
It started in 5 officers were killed in Dallas, in cold blood by a fucking a left-wing BLM supporter.
So how can we say if this was anything related to the right, you would instantly say we can draw a direct line from the hate speech that you guys engage in online to that type of violence.
It's not hate speech. It's not hate speech. I'm sorry. Like, that's such a fucking stretch.
Your definition, though, Prime.
All cops are bastards defund the police, somehow that equals hate speech.
Speech
right?
doesn't exist.
Hate speech doesn't mean a thing if it means that you can't call out
hate speech is a meaningless term.
Shut up. It doesn't mean anything if you can't call a profession for the bad things that a profession does, right? If
you're not talking about a profession.
Racial animus,
that's not what hate speech is.
All cops are bastards. Says every individual cop is a bastard.
If you're relating speech, right? Speech that calls for violence against African Americans, violence against Asian Americans, to denigrate our trans community. If you're relating that to all cops are bastards, these two things are fucking synonymous. I'm sorry, you don't understand what hate speech. This is the new Gotham to you.
PrimeCayes. Hey, Prime. Do you know what term actually does call out cops for the things that?
You're gonna say Oathbreaker.
Just in case you're
the
curious.
name of a really good band and a good movement.
It's a good band. Yeah, it's a good band.
Prime, if I had the phrase "all blacks are bastards" and I said I was only talking
Those
about
are
the
the
ones
same
that
things.
disproportionately commit
Those are the
crime,
same
do you
things.
think would that be an okay slogan?
Those are the same things, exactly.
Well, no, I didn't say the same.
And the China virus also didn't mean anything. No, and the China virus also didn't mean anything, right? That's the same. That's the same thing.
Well, actually,
right?
Either word, crime.
Two things
The
are
China virus.
mean-
The China virus actually did mean something. It was just buried by the media for a fucking year until
Okay,
we
I think we
actually
need to clarify.
came
I think we need to clarify.
came along to the science.
I think we need to clarify something, okay? Agitation is a tool, right? I don't think tools are bad or good. They exist. The problem is that it's really easy with agitative activism to potentially cause more harm. Very, very peaceful, more the sedate advocates are much less likely to be involved in situations that develop into a riot. Do I think all agitators cause riots or are trying to get riots? Obviously, that's not the case, right? Usually things just get out of hand. There's no intention in my mind that agitators want to go out and riot. There might be select few, but it's usually not the agitative leaders. The problem is that it is a more dangerous tool because it has the higher potential to cause harm because it is divisive in nature. It is literally designed to inflame emotions and get people engaged. And if you already have a highly engaged, highly inflamed, highly divided country, that's where you get into dangerous territory, right? The thing with activism that's made it so difficult in the past is that it was really fucking hard to get heard because nobody cared. But with social media, that shit changed a lot, right? And now we have to be more responsible with our rhetoric because if you boost agitators and these agitators get heard by people who aren't interested in thinking about the nuance, who are mostly interested in disturbing the shit, you are going to create situations that are more likely to cause harm. Do I think that active political advocates who are trending on Twitter are going to a BLM protest with the hopes of man, I sure hope a riot starts and we can fucking do lots of damage? Obviously fucking not. Obviously not. I genuinely don't think that. The problem is that they have to be responsible with their rhetoric in a highly inflamed situation. If I had two bros fighting near me and then I went in and I agitated them, I shouldn't exactly be shocked when fists come to blow and be like, well, it had nothing to do with me. I was just calling them names and screaming and agitating the situation. Nothing to do with me.
This is the problem. No, listen, this is the problem that I've been trying to get people to understand.
Have you? I have no idea. You've been all over the map, buddy.
Yeah, Scott.
No. I get it. I'm in a den of lefties, and I'm the right winger.
I'm a lefty now. Come on, Scott.
You two are centrists at best. Anyways.
Oh, gee. Yeah, thank you. I am a fucking centrist. Yeah, okay, exactly. I'll take that.
So anyways, the issue here is look at something compared to the civil rights movement. When you had the civil rights movement, right, you had liberals working with the radicals, and you had liberals as a message piece, as a mouthpiece for the movement. And the idea was to get specific targeted policy that was more liberal, more freeing, and made people's lives better. What you have today is you have movements that are based upon radical philosophy that is absolutely illiberal philosophy, that is not about sovereignty of the individual, that is not about freedom and liberty from an Enlightenment perspective, instead, and is not one that goes along with the ideas of our Constitution and freedom and liberty for all. And what you have is, instead of that being a vocal minority that is then taken by a larger group of people, and this larger group of people push specific liberal policies that move the needle forward and make, I say, better country. Instead, you have radicals that are given mouthpieces. You have social media institutions that will ban or censor people that have right-wing ideas, but will promulgate and push forward some of the most radical left-wing ideas. You have media institutions going out and saying mostly peaceful protests while a building's fucking burning behind them. You have the vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris, literally advocating and donating money to bail fund to get people that were rioting out of jail as fast as possible. So you don't have liberals working as a mouthpiece in order to bring something about. Compare this to the radical student movement of the New Left. Yes, you had Marxists and you had radicals, but what you had was a large faction of anti-war Vietnam protesters, right, that were liberal and were against the war on the principles of liberal Enlightenment values, albeit left-wing, and then they were fighting against the Vietnam War. But what happened once that coalition collapsed because we got out of Vietnam? Well, they fucking failed. The radicals took over the voting process, and then they created the Weatherman Project and started bombing fucking buildings, right?
They created the Weatherman Project?
Yeah, the student radicals
Can
vote
I say
for
something?
elections.
Yeah.
So this is the problem.
So okay, I want to hear from Katie. Steven, if you can check your DMs, please. Go ahead, Katie.
So, Erudite, I understand what you're saying, and I trust me, I'm not like big on harm. I like harm reduction, okay? But the argument that I've been trying to say against that is that we seem to be specifically comfortable with talking about harm reduction in this way when it's about less pressing issues. Like, I'm not saying that that's up to you, right? I'm going to direct this to Destiny very soon as well. It's like this being offended about ACAB because it's basically hate speech and it's attacking people. Like, it loses a lot of context. And it's really weird that earlier in the discussion, like Destiny was asking us to read between the lines of what people are saying, but suddenly ACAB is taken literally, like my fucking ex-boyfriend that thought toxic masculinity literally meant all masculinity is toxic. Okay? Like, please, come on, like use your brain a little bit. And if you can't, then maybe you should check yourself about that, you know? So that's my first argument. And I'm going to try to use this as an analogy and see how it works. So my previous argument a while ago was that the bear is asleep. There isn't actual progress being made in terms of like promoting the status of African American people, or not fast enough in a way that is reasonable and ethical and moral. Okay, so I do agree that harm is wrong, that buildings burning is bad, that people dying is bad. But you know, it's kind of like when I talk about Israel and Palestine, people come to me and they say, so are you saying Palestinians shouldn't violently protest? You know, a lot of Israeli people would really prefer Palestinian people to just protest peacefully. You know, why can't you protest peacefully? And that's great and all, but that's not going to get Palestinian people in the news and their cause in the news and to people to actually give a fuck and try to do something about it. So I'm not saying people should riot violently. I'm saying to take what the BLM movement did and then say, well, there were also riots about that, so maybe they should talk nicer is really not fair and unreasonable. And it doesn't happen with other things. I think it's really cynical to call ACAB.
Katie, quick
Destiny has a hard out soon, so I want
to call me out exactly. Okay, I'm not talking about like what's right or nice or makes everybody warm and fuzzy all inside. I don't give a fuck about that. I don't care about that. Okay, what I'm talking about is what is the most
ACAB hate speech.
Because what you're doing is you are setting up the most divisive language possible, so you are guaranteeing that every person on the opposite side of that slogan fucking hates you before you've even opened your mouth.
Do you feel that way about other things as well? Or is it only this specific movement?
Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm screaming. None of us on here are normal people, okay? We're fucking losers that are online obsessively talking about politics. The average person does a 9-to-5 job, goes home. If he sees CNN on his TV, he turns that shit off and he hangs out with his family, or he turns on fucking,
Then
whatever.
you know what you should do? Put on the news something that doesn't catch his attention. So
yeah, but if the only thing that's catching their eyes is, oh wow, there are those people saying all cops are bastards again, and I know my local police and they're chill, or I've got a family member as a police officer and they're chill. Fuck these people.
I want to do a quick olive branch.
I don't need an olive branch from you, bro. Your tree is growing in a crazy ass garden. I don't want to be infected by whatever is growing the untapped roots.
I'm not talking to you.
Oh, okay, then great. You can offer an olive branch to them, okay? Or whoever your Kathy, okay? Yeah,
talking to Kathy
The
Newman.
whole point has nothing to do with how nice something is or how it makes people feel. It's about like what is the effectiveness of your political messaging. And the reality is that the more divisive or aggressive your message is, the less likely you are to get people on board with it.
Not all messages are meant to be
preach. Fucking preach.
80, quick olive branch.
Hold on.
Again.
What? No. What is that? One second. Look.
You literally interrupted me to let me go.
I promise you, you'll be able to go next, right? I just need to say something, right? Our friend Steven here has a heart out, and I just want to say something before he does that, right? Hey everyone, if you've been enjoying this content so far,
he just wants to say, make sure you sub.
I'm fucking chilling here. Anyway, if you've been enjoying this content, hit that follow button. Hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on, so you know I'm going live, right? We got a lot of content for you here. In case you don't know, in case you're new to me and the things that we're doing here, right? Come on over, hit up the channel, hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on, so you know I'm going live. On Wednesday, we're going to have a great interview with Investment Joy. He's like a huge YouTuber, and he talks about like ways to build wealth, ways to build wealth that are like not the norm, right? Easy
Marx
ways
doesn't like that.
Exactly, right? But like he gives like great ideas. Like if you're poor shit, right, and you don't know ways to like, you know, just put some little extra money in your pocket, Investment Joy has been doing this. I think it's gonna be a great interview. Come by, check it out. We'd love to see you there, right? And we got all kinds of other content here, including All Black Everything on Thursday. So in case you haven't done it, for some reason, for some godforsaken reason that you aren't already following this channel, make that happen right now. Hit that up button. And thank you for the subs. All of a sudden, I didn't ask for it, but I will take it. Thank you so much. We're in the hype train. All right. I just need to get that out. All right. Thank you so much.
What I'm trying to say, Katie, is just a quick olive branch, because people are saying like, oh, you can't riot. Oh, you can't do these violent protests, et cetera, et cetera. That's not how the civil rights movement was won. Everyone likes to highlight the sit-ins, right? Everyone likes to highlight, you know, the Million Man March. But the reason that MLK, right, the reason that these people were able to do that was because there were violent protests. And the fact of the matter is that there has to be a coalition sometimes that says, look, we demand liberty, we demand freedom, we demand to no longer be oppressed in whatever ways that we are doing. But when your movement is primarily a message that is based in an illiberal philosophy, and you do not have the majority of your movement as a peaceful protest. I know I lost you, but what I'm saying, but I'm not going to go as hard as some of these other people are saying. The reason the civil rights was successful wasn't just peaceful protests. The reason peaceful protests were so successful is because they came together and they said, look, we're going to have business suits and we're going to sit in. We're going to march peacefully. And because people knew that they demanded civil rights, and if they didn't get them, they were either going to get the peaceful protests or they were going to get the fucking violent protests. So you better choose the people that are offering you ways out with the peaceful protests. Sometimes you have to be violent in order to enact change. I am a supporter of political violence. I have no shame saying that.
I'm not actually. But
you're just scared to say it on Twitch because you support much more radical things than I do.
Do you think political violence is ever a viable option?
If you're asking about my own personal ethical framework, then I don't believe in violence, period. I'm pacifist. So
what about a slave attacking a slave owner? Would they be justified?
Can I just clarify? Are we just going to examine my moral world right now? It's like it's not the same as political advocacy. What I'm trying to say is like, I get ACAB is divisive, and I get the divisive slogans don't necessarily bring the conservative votes, okay? But that's not why ACAB is there. ACAB is not there to win Republicans. ACAB is there as an agitator, and then advocates are in charge of then translating that message into Republicans and conservatives and so forth. ACAB is there to grab attention because people have been suffering for a very, very long time and suffering peacefully and quietly and diplomatically, and that did not work. That does not work, not fast enough. So it's fine that there's attention brought to an issue. I find it incredibly interesting that suddenly with ACAB and with toxic masculinity and SJWs, these statements are really offensive, but when people are just casually racist, I mean, that's just the status quo. It's really
literally
weird.
No one says that except for like two groypers online. Like,
do you want to talk about systemic racism, Scott? I would love to talk about that.
Wait, casual racism and systemic racism are two very different concepts, to be fair.
No, I'm not saying that they're the same. I'm not going to take this criticism from Scott, who doesn't believe in systemic racism. Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm not a Marxist, so.
Oh my God.
Well,
You know,
God. No, God.
Listen, I have read every book this Marx guy wrote, and the first thing on every page is systemic racism, hashtag critical race theory.
Your inability to understand the roots of the political philosophy
I'm so
you hold
stupid.
is not,
really,
is not my fault.
I don't understand the roots. God. I'm very dumb. I'm sorry.
How about the hype train?
I love you guys. I need to leave. Okay.
Bye.
Okay. I love you all very much. You all very, very cool. I hope one day we can all have a bigger brain as erudite.
I hope Destiny, Steven, I hope you'll come back. Like, it's been rough for you today. I was pretty hard on you. But I think
you're never hard on me. You only make me hard. Okay. I love you.
Bye. How about the hype train? We have 90 seconds left. Subs to the channel, give bits or give subs or resub. You got a resub, that also helps. All that is a huge help. And if you're like part of Destiny's crew, don't leave yet until like
don't leave.
You hit the follow button. Yeah, I mean, they're already gone, but
yeah, they left. Let's be real.
But how about the hype train? We have just a minute over, and let's see if we can get that completed. We're a level 5 hype train. Let's see if we get a maximum hype train. Sub to channel, get bits or give subs. Thank you so much. All right, and thank you, Live a Little, for being so kind. Oh man, you've been great. So let's go for. Let's see if we go for a half hour more. I think we've got a little bit more here, right? And then we'll call it a day, all right? Okay.
I could do another half hour.
Okay, all right. Yelling at us,
Scott.
I'm sure you could. Another half hour yelling at us? No, I think you could.
So erudite, what do I need to do to get Destiny to think I have a big brain? Like, what are the steps that I need to follow to make big man Destiny like me?
Destiny doesn't care what your brain power is. The only thing he cares about is can he get you to say something extremely dumb or extremely controversial so that his chat can laugh at you.
I actually think he's more about consistency, to be honest. I think some of your positions, to be honest, Katie, do lack in consistency, and that just creates easy holes to go for. I'm not saying I am perfectly consistent by any means, but I just don't want to be jumping on the throw Destiny under the rain. I don't think I'm doing anything particularly special though necessarily.
Yeah, I was gonna say he seems more like the principle of the thing is what he's gonna nail you down on. So
I'm sorry. I feel bad. I didn't actually mean that question. I don't really care. I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry if I made it seem like it.
No.
Thank you for the kind rate from Destiny, the 3,000 people who are suddenly here. Thank you so much. Again, guys, if you haven't done so yet, I got a lot of content for you. We do this 6 nights a week. Don't miss out. Hit that follow button right now. Before you maybe head out, do something else, right? Hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. I got a lot of great content just this week. It's going to be great. I think you're going to love this interview of Investment Joy. And we have some other great interviews coming up in the following weeks. So once again, hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. Thank you so much to Destiny. Shout out to you, buddy. And thank you for the people or kind of people who are following right now. It really does mean a lot. Thank you so much. Okay. Let's continue on with the content. Go ahead.
If you have any questions in terms of my consistency, I would love to flesh it out with you. Unless Scott wants to yell about something.
I mean, it feels like you just kind of passed it off as well, I was just being mildly passive aggressive towards you. So it's I don't really need to get into poking holes in your argument.
No, I appreciate it. I'm interested. To be fair, this panel is all over the place. I have admitted I'm mostly agitating, and that's my role on this one. So
he's the devil's advocate. I appreciate
Not
it.
a devil's advocate. I believe in a lot of the things I said, but obviously, real life requires a bit more nuance than that. I just, I think it's a bit. How do I say this without using the term that triggers everyone? I think certain demographics are very aware when they're being attacked, and it comes from certain privilege of them not being under attack very often. So when there is the slightest bit of non-diplomatic criticism, it's very upsetting, and then they're very good at yelling and crying about it, but incapable of understanding like the perspective of actually oppressed people, you know?
Katie, I understand.
The term is white fragility.
All right. Well, I'm gonna avoid that landmine because I don't even want to go down that road. But don't you think you said you were a pacifist? But then when
that's personally.
Wait, hold on. I could have sworn earlier you said you were a pacifist.
Yes,
and you don't advocate for violence ever.
The beautiful thing about me is that I have my own personal, moral, ethical, like things that I think are true. But when I actually discuss them with other people, like none of my views align. So I argue from other perspectives. So I have what I believe in online. Personally, I believe in the discontinuation of the human race. Okay, so none of this really matters to me. But I like conversation, so I do engage.
You heard it here, boys. She's for continuing the human race. She's on the market. She's looking to be a wife.
Scott. She didn't say I want to be a trad wife. She just said.
No, I mean, that's what I heard. That's what I heard. I'm just in this right-wing echo chamber. That's what I heard. Trad wife coming soon, Katie.
Yes, impregnate me, please. I would love to be a walking incubator and spend the rest of my life serving my strong man.
Oh my god! All right, really quick, Katie. When rhetoric like ACAB, like all cops are bastards, it feels. Okay, and you, Scott, don't you feel like this is all like inevitably going to lead to violence because there's no way of
there's no need for me to restate my position that I said several times. The problem is not ACAB or Rhetoric.
Hey, Scott, when did you tell me about like? Okay, never mind.
No, I just mean the overarching argument that I've been making this entire time. The problem is not
they're not liberals. Yes.
Right. The problem is that you have philosophically rotted the left wing, and they have a mishmash of so many different contradictory philosophical opinions that they are. Well, it's Marx. It's like they take some.
Why do you keep saying
postmodernism? They take Marcusean philosophy. They've taken critical theory, and which is a form of like cultural Marxism.
I've never went to college, but in my life I have taken critical.
It's right, and so I mean, I've made
this so boring.
Like I said, it is, it is boring to talk about what's really going on instead of just like the kitty cat fights over
my brain is very conflicted. You see.
Oh boy.
Anyway. Can I
finish your point? I want to say something to Erudite as well. I've been trying to get to the things she's been saying things. I want to respond to those things, but I gotta deal with Scott. I gotta say my point. I gotta no. You're gonna go right next. Yeah,
she's Canadian.
I gotta mentally destroy. I gotta mentally destroy Destiny, right? For the 7 billionth time. I got a lot of things on my plate here. So anyway, Katie, finish your point.
So. When you ask if ACAB is going to lead to violence, I don't know that's possible. It's just really interesting that the focus is whether ACAB is going to lead to violence, but where the focus is that should be, that there's a lot of violence already happening, and ACAB is a tool that's trying to be used to attract attention to that already occurring violence. So what we're worried about is that ACAB is very offensive and mean and is hate speech and is all these bad stuff. And that's the focus people have, right? People hear ACAB, they get their fifis hurt, instead of thinking about the actual concept and what it's trying to convey. Why is there a divisive message here? I don't know, maybe because African American people are being brutalized.
Katie, there's a divisive message here because you and I want police reform at the end of the day, but you and I disagree on everything you just fucking said for the last minute. So when you do that,
Are you asking
push
me
away.
if I say ACAB? I don't say ACAB when I argue with you.
No, I know, but you're saying that ACAB is effective rhetoric, right?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm not okay. Do you want me?
I seriously must have been missing a lot of this
Okay, then I'll
conversation,
try to make this more clear and be less sneaky about it. Okay, ACAB might lead to violence. I don't think it's hate speech. I don't know if it's very effective. It seems to really upset people. So it doesn't seem to be very effective, right? But after I admitted that, I can still argue that my criticism is that even though it's not an effective message, the resistance people have to it is very interesting, because it's weird to have liberals and centrists be very concerned about ACAB not being mean and not effective.
How is that interesting?
This is so a room temperature IQ take. Like, it's not ACAB in isolation, right? When people hear ACAB, they associate it with certain movements, right? When normies hear ACAB, they think those Antifa people, or they think those BLM protesters that are burning down cities, and like no one
think abolish the police.
They think right. They think that without that they think people that want like community policing in like a modern state-run society that makes no fucking sense and like wouldn't fucking work unless you had an anarchist commune that was separated from the state. Like they think all of these.
I don't understand. You expect a slogan to explain complete policies? It's a slogan. It's meant to catch people's attention.
I literally support the slogan ACAB. I'm just saying that they think that your defense of it doesn't make sense because it's not the slogan itself. It's the spider webs and tendrils of all of the things that the slogan is associated with.
Okay, then I'll try to focus. When I say it hurts people's feelings, I mean, they get triggered by the meanie slogan, and then they think a lot of things they associated with a lot of movements that are making them very scared and very anxious instead of looking into the actual issues. What is ACAB? Who made it? What are they talking about? But they don't do that because people are kind of dumb, okay? People are dumb. But some people do that. And those are the people I can actually engage with.
And disagree with them because they have bad fucking
see, so I can't actually argue this with you because you actually think that the movements that ACAB actually stands for are wrong.
I think it's a slogan, like we both support it for very different reasons.
Yeah, maybe ask you instead then, Katie, I'd be curious on, in your opinion, like what is actually optimal activism? Like in your opinion, like what is the best way to do advocacy, even agitation potentially? Like what do you think is the most effective means towards the goal, which would be police reform? I mean, all the things that actually making sure that we conceding this. I agree with you about a lot of police reforms, right? Stuff like that. So what do you, in your opinion, what is actually ideal activism?
This kind of weird, and I said this before, right? When I'm here defending ACAB, usually when I advocate for things, I'm the one in the room being like, hey, let's not use ACAB. It makes people kind of weird and stuff like that. But ACAB needs to be there for me to be able to defend the kind of touchy white person from ACAB, you know, for me to build a connection with that person, for me to be able to convey my type of advocacy. So it's what Destiny said right at the beginning. Agitators are there to help advocates advocate better. It's like whatever Scott is saying about like the liberals, you know,
so you think ACAB is a positive for the police reform movement, and that helps them advocate for police reform better?
Not people that go, you know, when Prime says, just
ACAB,
people who I don't think that's helpful.
Just people that say ACAB. Just people that say ACAB. Do you think
if that's the only thing that they're doing, that's not very helpful? No. What Prime did earlier is not very helpful. I don't think it is. But I will defend him and his right to do that.
So to make sure I'm understanding your position, you kind of view it as like you need the agitators to get people to just fucking tune in, right? You kind of need like those big, bold, bright neon highlight headlines to get people to listen. And then after they're listening, they might look into effective advocates. That's kind of the streamline that you're seeing. Do you think that actually broadly happens?
That doesn't
I think it
work.
does.
Argument this whole time.
I would like to give an example.
Completely failed.
Katie, please.
I don't think it fails. the BLM thing got on the train that it got because of the George Floyd incident. Murder. I'll call it murder. I don't care. So I'm not saying that it's a slogan, but something happened. It grabbed a lot of attention. It got a lot of people emotional, a lot of people, and that sparked the movement. So I don't care if a slogan is very problematic. The issue is, and I think that's where you and I disagree the most, Erudite. I understand what you mean when you say that the country is hyper political, but I think it's just signaling that people are not actually looking into the policies. People are not actually worried about how to make equity. Nobody talks about reparations. Like, that's not a thing, you know? I sit on my lefty debate servers, and even with all the lefties, whenever I bring up reparations, people are like, there's no point talking about this, it's not gonna work, blah 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 blah, and they just dismiss it. We need to bring attention, because there isn't enough attention. Because for every if there's 100 people,
the entire media and world,
if there's 100 people
on those points right now,
if there's 100 people that are exposed to a negative slogan, and let's say 70% of them are kind of turned off and they're not very happy. If there's 30% who have done the research, have met correct advocates, and are on board, that's more people than before. That is just the case.
Except you are operating again under the assumption that everyone will support your radical left-wing bullshit if they just do the research. I literally
just said right now that 70% out of the thing that I gave would not.
You're God, I don't know.
Katie, you're going under the assumption.
No, you said 70% will be turned off, right? You keep mischaracterizing it as everyone that doesn't agree with you. It's like, oh my, their fees were hurt. No, some people you piss off. They do their research, and then they realize how pernicious and wrong your movement is.
Exactly.
Right? Like there was
Those
plenty of people
with ACAB, with ACAB and BLM. If we look at shit like Michael Brown, turned
hands up, don't shoot. Was an opportunity right before that slogan came out. Was an opportunity where there was a coalition of centrist liberals as well as radical leftists that wanted to support things like mandatory body cameras, that wanted to get rid of things like statewide run qualified immunity, things that wanted to fix actual policies that people could agree upon widely in America that would make the situation we're in better. And then what ended up happening is that the radicals got so much of a fucking voice that it constantly became a debate about racism, systematic racism, and about issues that even if we grant you, which I fucking don't, but even if we grant you that these are genuine problems and that these are root causes of the situation, you shot yourself in the foot from being able to actually rectify the situation. And so I'm gonna end.
Who just don't like racism. They don't like racism.
Go ahead, Scott, please.
I'm going to end real quick, right, with a Spike Cohen fucking metaphor. So maybe you guys need a fucking metaphor, right? Me and my friend, I'm a white guy, I have a black friend, we're walking down an alleyway, and then someone beats the dog shit out of us and sends us both to the hospital. Busts my face up, gives me a minor concussion, breaks a few ribs, and I'm in the hospital for a week. And my black friend is paralyzed. And he is permanently paralyzed from the waist down because of the beating. The conversation that many on the left are having is the black guy in a wheelchair has it worse, when really we should be talking about the fact that there are police out there beating the shit out of people.
Oh my God, but okay.
That is so stupid.
We've actually had that conversation. The left has been talking about that, right? You seem to be unaware of it. I guess you don't know what leftists are saying, right? I guess you are completely uninformed about the leftist movement, but they've actually been talking about exactly that broad-based police reform, right? Don't be surprised that a police reform movement led by a movement called Black Lives Matter might be focused on Black lives, right? But that doesn't mean that people are unaware of exactly what you're talking about.
I'm just gonna give you one word to just respond to what the fuck you're saying. Whoosh. That's exactly what you both did. Whoosh.
Okay.
You've completely lost the fucking plot.
I mean, we don't have the translator because we're not philosophically liberal.
We didn't
so
have
it's just like
Erudite wasn't here with us, so
we don't have the proper tools to engage with this masterpiece. So basically, I feel like I'm repeating myself. I don't think that lukewarm. Yes, I would like Black people to have a better life, but I'm not actually advocating or doing any active work to make that happen or supporting specific policies or voting according to that. I don't think that's better than people being more than some people being more upset about it versus some people actually becoming active political supporters. I don't think liberals generally saying, yes, it really sucks how the Blacks have it is very helpful for Black people. If it were, then things wouldn't be as bad as they are. So we need people who are willing to be more aggressive, and I don't mean violent and hurt people, but I mean aggressive in terms of the choices they make when they engage politically. And I think those slogans are a good way to make that happen.
Katie, you absolutely beat me to it. Like, this is exactly what we need, right? It has to be. It can't, this idea that all rhetoric has to be palatable to the other side, that does not necessarily be the case. One, like, rhetoric has different purposes. We get that, right? Like, that's like the basis of the conversation. Rhetoric has different purposes. And so some of that rhetoric absolutely should be what Erudite was talking about, right? Like rhetoric that appeals to the white majority, right? And even then, what exactly does that mean? Because there are plenty of white individuals who are already on our side, right? And who want radical change, right? But I guess when you're saying that, there's a sort of liberal, conservative, centrist, like vague, nebulous group of individuals who are possibly gettable, right? If you use just the right words, right? If you rub their balls in just the right way, then they'll come over to your side. Great. And that's important. That's absolutely important, right? But like, what my problem is, Erudite, is how you dismiss the other side, right? Dismiss the side that brings it to a national conversation, because it's not like African Americans, right, weren't talking about these things previously, right? None of this is new. We've been talking about it. We've been talking about police violence like all throughout the 90s, right? Especially when there was like the war on crime, like the height of the war on crime era, right? They were talking about these things, right? And they were marching, right? Very peacefully, very small protests, marching. They didn't get attention. Right now, you put in these you put in this divisive rhetoric, right? And people talk about it, right? It gets on the news, and then Destiny, right, goes on fucking rants about how bullshit it is. Oh my god, it's the worst thing ever, right? But what is he doing? He's talking about the issue. He's talking about the issue in a way that he might not have otherwise, right? Because it literally wouldn't have been content for him. I wish he was here. Fuck, I should have done before. But it literally wouldn't have been content for him. It wouldn't. No. One second. I just want to get to Erudite for a second. It wouldn't have been content from the same way, and that's not to say that he's a bad guy, right? And that he actually doesn't give a crap about like civil rights and the safety of minorities, right? I'm sure he is, and it's something he cares about. But like, this inspires conversation. And then we can go from there, right? Once we bring people in. But if the conversation doesn't even start, right? Then nothing happens, nothing changes. So that's the room for the agitators. So Erudite, I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I do think that advocates can create like those trendy neon signs, just like agitators. But I would agree with Katie, kind of in like what you outlined as like the ideal advocacy kind of situation, right? You get something flashy, something that kind of catches people's eyes. I mean, this is basic advertising. I'm sure you're like probably borrowing it right from there. Basic advertising, catchy picture, sexy female on a car, catches the eye, and then in the bottom there's like some script about what the car is and the details, right? And so I totally get that basic premise. I absolutely understand. I don't think that that's a ridiculous claim. I think I'm disagreeing with you guys fundamentally on what's on the neon sign, because I think if there's something on the neon sign that misleads people in direction of what the movement is about, that needs to be corrected quickly. And I guess I'm concerned because I see, not just BLM, because I really, people like harp on BLM, but there's lots of movements that get really trendy lines that then get twisted. You know, when I ask a common person, like because like Desi said, we're internet people. We're very involved in internet culture, right? You're probably the type, I'm the type that if I see something, right, I write it down and I go research it. But that's not the average person. And so if you have a neon sign that says ACAB, all cops are bastards, and then you have a bunch of people, including certain movement leaders, saying defund the police and really pushing this rhetoric and getting really, really aggressive, and you start noticing a major group of your like moderate liberals who are kind of stability boomers a little bit. They just don't care that much, but they don't hate black people, and they definitely don't want to see black people like being murdered in the streets, right? Those people get turned off because alongside it there were these major riots and stuff like that. And that's the stuff where I'm like, you probably need to call it out, right? It took me so long looking into BLM before I even found 8 Can't Wait. And once I found that, I'm like, why isn't this on fucking front central news with every major
because
BLM
it's not going to
advocate?
get attention, and you know that it's not going to make people read it.
I don't know if that's true.
So
I don't think it's true at all.
I have
Katie,
one more.
it's not true.
I have one more example.
Just have
to try to make this make sense, right? Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street and its goals, right? Like, I think we can agree that it wasn't a particularly violent movement, right? That wasn't like its goals weren't particularly like, let's get out in the streets and burn things down, right? Like, okay, but when the cameras came to the encampments, right? What did they look for? Did they look for like, okay, what's the general sentiment here, right? Let's try to like find the consensus and and just like figure out like what people like believe that this movement should go to, like most people, right? But I'm being ineloquent, I'm sorry. Where they went to when those cameras did show up, right? They looked for the homeless people that were there, because of the encampments, they allow homeless people to be a part of their movement, right? They're like, look at this, right? They're this park, right? It's being filled with homeless people, and they're shitting in the streets, right? They'd find individuals, because like just anyone could like show up and be in the physical area, right? Who were like fighting, right? Look at the violence is happening. And it's just like 2 individual people fighting. It has nothing to do with the wider protests, right? And they would film this. They would ask individuals. They would hold on 1 second. They would specifically look for individuals who had the least idea what's going on, right? And they would talk to them like, oh, what do you think this protest is about? They say, I don't know. I was kind of here. I have no idea. I don't know, what's going on, right? And then that's what will be on the news. So let's not pretend the media is just like objectively looking at this, right? Like when that protest happened, when that BLM protest happens, you're talking about that neon sign, right? Yes, there's gonna be someone who comes there with something that like burn the cops, right? Okay, but then right next to them will be someone holding up a sign like stop the violence against people that look like me, with an arrow pointing down, right? Something a bit like simpler, more palatable, right? Like the media looks for the most sensational thing. So the fact that those images exist, that will always happen with a protest movement. With a media that's obsessed with maintaining the status quo and sensationalizing, then that's just going to be the news.
I have to call you out. What killed Occupy Wall Street? What was it that killed the Occupy movement? Was it the media? Was it the cops coming in and busting up? No. What killed the Occupy Wall Street movement was that there was a libertarian and liberal bent to Occupy Wall Street and a populist movement. And what occurred was more and more groups came in with radical fucking silly ass SJW idealities. That is what killed the Occupy. You can shake your fucking head, but if you shake your head, you literally don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
I literally do know what the fuck I'm talking about. Actually,
no, you don't.
I completely do.
Yeah,
I do.
No, you don't.
Yeah,
no, you don't.
Okay.
You literally don't know what you're talking about. This happened in almost all of the all of the Occupy movements. It happened in Austin. It happened in New York. It happened in Las Vegas.
So can we agree it's SJW's fault and move on?
No, what I am saying is that the messaging was able to be poisoned by bad philosophy and by leftist infighting. That is what took down Occupy movement. They pushed out libertarians. They pushed out
the libertarians are gone. Oh no, the libertarians. What will we do about the fucking libertarians?
Oh no, you fucking movement crashed.
The libertarians are here anymore, right? So where the libertarian goes, so goes the country. The libertarians are gone.
Yeah,
amazing.
Occupy Wall Street didn't accomplish anything, Prime.
This bullshit lie that you're trying to promulgate, that the ideas behind the way the media treated Occupy Wall Street and the way the media treated BLM protests are somehow the same or equivalent is just patently fucking absurd. The media was coming out and saying, oh, you can't get coronavirus if you go to a BLM protest. That's not how coronavirus works. And then 2 weeks later, anti-lockdown protests were like wrong and immoral because these people weren't wearing masks. And actually everyone at BLM was wearing masks. There's literally people talking about peaceful protests standing in front of burning fucking buildings. The media absolutely disparaged any right-wing protests against the mandates and lockdowns and absolutely supported and cheered on violent protests for over a fucking year.
Okay.
So Erudite, when you talk about what's on the sign, I understand what you're saying, right? It's just the thing that I'm having when you're saying it matters what's on the sign because the sign is going to send people to the wrong direction.
Just it sends them in a direction. That's all I'm saying. It obviously is going to send them in a direction. That's
but all. My argument is that the people are stagnant and there's a status quo that isn't working. So I don't care what direction the sign takes them because the sign is going to meet different people differently, and whatever people I can get is more than I had before the sign existed. But if the sign isn't catchy enough, if the sign isn't like neon enough, then people are going to walk past it, and I don't think we disagree on that. And another just yes, no?
Sort of. I'm not fully convinced that you couldn't have found a way to make police reform or 8 Can't Wait or any sort of more legitimate policy changes more palatable. I certainly couldn't because I fucking suck at naming things and making them catchy. But some people are really, really good at that, right? And so I'm not fully convinced that we couldn't have found a better neon sign.
Yeah, and we're talking about large scale agitation. You got to take some responsibility about how these slogans are perceived by the general public.
I really resent that statement. It's really upsetting because it seems like the people who need to take responsibility for really divisive slogans are always people who are certain groups seem to have a lot more accountability than other groups in terms of their efforts for advocacy. So I just wanted to clearly say that. I agree with you, Half-Baked, on the principle. It's just this thing that if you just work based on definitions and if you just work based on, well, it makes sense. ACAB would lead to violence, so I can just criticize it because it's just the case. That's ignoring a lot of context, ignoring the context that we don't judge other slogans that way, that advocate for different purposes that aren't for African-American equality movements. History of racial relations in the United States, it's just a lot of things that are not being taken into account. Trust me, I'm big on just saying, I don't think the distinction you're making makes sense because definitionally those things are the same, but context does matter. There is an added element to it. So I need to say that, but so Erudite, it's possible. I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't think ACAB is the best. Okay? I don't think toxic masculinity or white fragility are the best things either, although white fragility came from academia, so that's a bit different, right? But the other point that I want to bring up that we haven't really talked about is how you get that criticism for any slogan. Me Too got that criticism. Toxic masculinity gets this criticism. ACAB, BLM, whatever slogan you're putting out there, if it's grabby enough and if it's neon enough, someone is going to say, that's a really bad slogan. You should have come up with someone better. And I suck at names too. So maybe there was a better thing than ACAB, but I think the fixation on ACAB is that's the problem it seems, and I'm not saying from you or from Health Bake, because I don't think you are the type of people.
Destiny.
But I think that liberals and centrists, instead of focusing on criticizing how ACAB is divisive and helps to violence and is like hate speech, you talk about being good advocates. So now it's your job to see ACAB, understand the context, the frustration, the fact that it's just a neon sign, and then translate it. You are our liberals. You are our saviors. Talk to the conservatives. And again, we set you up with a nasty card because you have to defend ACAB, and it's not very pretty or nice. But you can do it, Erudite. You have the brain that Destiny like. I'm sure you can do it. I couldn't. I don't have the brain.
I gotta get out of here. Thank you, PrimeCayes, for having me.
Why don't we wrap it up anyway? Why don't we give it a proper outro? Right, we'll start with you. Okay.
Oh, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, we'll do that proper outro.
Yeah.
And before you do, 1 second. Calm down. To my audience, right? If you've been enjoying this content, stick around, hit that follow button right now, make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. We do 6 nights a week. We got a lot of content for you. In fact, the content's going to continue. We're going to go to Open Walk-On Panel. Open Walk-On Panel where you, yes, who's sitting at home, may participate. Go into the server and go to the robot waiting room so you can be let in. If you want instructions on that, exclamation point open in chat to be a part of it, right? It's just what I just said. So be a part of that. Exclamation point open in chat. Oh my God, my keyboard's fucking freaking. And also exclamation social to find my social media. I have Twitter, right? Be a part of the Twitter, right? Like that's where I let you know things are happening. So jump on there. Discord is a heart and soul of the community. So we're gonna have the open panel in just a second, right? So stick around and jump on that Twitter. Be a part of the community. We'd love to have you. YouTube's where fun and thoughts. If you missed anything, right? If you missed any part of me ass blasting Destiny, right? Well then the YouTube is where you'll find it. Like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. Now we'll give an outro to my amazing guest. We'll start with my man Scott. Scott, I love fighting you. Scott, you're I told you.
Yeah, I'm here. So I am Scott from Fabian Liberty. We're a duo anarcho-capitalist Twitch stream, do a lot of debates out here and fun stuff like that. You know, it was a fun night. You know, I came here with an overarching message that no one on the panel seemed to want to engage with or understand.
Whoosh.
Just like the leftist den that it is, they wanted to argue about terms and what is and isn't hate speech. And anytime they get dunked on, they just pivot to a new discussion because they realize that they're wrong. But, you know, hey, at least Destiny puts up a good fight with his poor logical fallacies and his pivoting. And you get to call him out on his bullshit from time to time. But, you know, it's fun. You can always have me back. Thank you so much. And, you know, see you around. I know you guys loved it.
See you again.
I love
Scott.
you, buddy. I do. You're great. Okay, so I'm gonna give an outro to everyone else. Remember, to my audience, we still will have content coming up for you, right? Despite everyone, we're gonna have more content. Next, we'll go to Katie. Katie, you are amazing. Hi. I'll tell you more about how amazing you were later on because I don't have time to tell you how great you were. So Katie, because you're great at me. So Katie.
I'm gonna do this thing and fight against the socialization I was given as a child, and I'm gonna promote myself. I have a podcast, and we talk about dumb stuff and life and shit. And I'm gonna plug it into chat, and I'm going to go bury myself in the sand or something. And I had a lot of fun. Remember, I was an agitator. I can also make nuanced takes. I know it's hard to believe, but it's the truth. And there we go.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, now stick around until we're done here. And next we got half-baked takes. It was really nice having you here. Right, I really appreciate.
Spoke all over him.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. But
no. I appreciate you having me. Hopefully, I can come back whenever you need somebody on the center right or the right leaning side of things. So, yeah, no. You can follow me at HB Takes. I really am not currently online, but you know, if this ever pans out, you know, shit.
That's Twitch. HB Takes.
Hey, we can make it. I don't have a Twitch, but
Okay.
you know, shit. No, that's Twitter. My fault. I'm see that's how bad I am at this shit. But I don't even have a Twitch, so you know, if you know this pans out, maybe we'll make one.
Okay, so here's what you need to do, right? Because Katie's also pretty bad at this. Katie and Hotbake, you actually have to put the link that you want people to follow you at in the chat so people can.
I put it in.
All right, I got you.
Where was it? I don't see your link. Oh no, you did.
I'll put it again.
Put it
in the Discord. In Discord.
No. Well, you could do it there too, but you can also just do it in my Twitch chat, so people can hit you up, right? Yeah. But thank you, Happy Takes. So much appreciated, right?
Thank you, man.
Erudite's not gonna make the same mistake. So not so erudite. Thank you for coming through. You were a lot of fun, all right? You really are a liberal, right? I was like questioning because when we talked, you were like, I'm not exactly sure where to place myself. I'm kind of all over the place, right? And I'm like, okay, we'll find out. You're definitely liberal. That's okay.
Definitely center left, yeah.
No, liberal. Yeah. Because I despise liberals, and you put a kind face on an enemy, right? Like so. No, thank you so much for coming through. I really do appreciate everything you did. That your perspective and you being here. You add a lot to the panel. Tell the world about yourself.
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess I have to say thanks to PrimeCayes. Even if I put a nice face on the enemy, it's good to have enemies, I suppose, in debates. But I'm brand new to Twitch. Actually, I have to thank you, Prime. I went from 25 followers to 130 tonight alone, so super grateful to you for that. Yeah, which is really exciting. I actually dominantly more talk about psychology. I'm trained in psychology. I'm a licensed addictions counselor. I'm a psychometrician. So this was a little bit out of my comfort zone normally, but hopefully I didn't do too terribly. I'm not sure I'll agree with you yet, PrimeCayes, on quite my positions on things, just because I would like to hope that you'd think I'm more nuanced than even you maybe imagine. But yeah, I really enjoyed being here, and hopefully I can chat with you guys again.
Absolutely. Everyone, the links are in chat. And not so Erudite's links in chat. Katie's link is in chat. She'll put it in there again. And Halfway Take Up Piles, pull it in there again. So everyone check out their content, right? They're great people. I'm very happy for them. Destiny's as well. Fabian Liberty, another great guy. Scott is his name. Fabian Liberty is the channel. So yeah. Okay. We're going to continue on for Open Walk on panel right after this. Anyone here is welcome to join us, but if not, that's okay. Thanks for your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion. A lot of passion today. With my community, I know they appreciate you as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.